I like.
See, I don't know about that.
Go ahead.
Like,
Go ahead.
and like as a Bucks fan, like you have definitely laid witness to dudes that Giannis just hates at the core of his being. And
Harden.
I can't wait till they play the Hawks because he's just going to wave off everybody and he's going to go 1v1 on Bogdanovich and make him look like a chump. Like, how dare you run away from my team? We could have been something. But nah, you're on the Hawks. And he is just going to murder him on live television.
Well, yeah, like it shouldn't be like the one dude. He dunked on. Wasn't it Bogdanovich? He dunked on like a couple seasons ago, and just like totally orphaned his children.
Or are you talking about the guy on the Knicks?
Maybe it was the Knicks. Like
who he just went nuts overhead.
Yeah.
Just one of those things where you're like, man, I don't know if that seems illegal.
Like
for some reason.
Come on, Giannis, he has children. He has children. But no, like I mean, I don't think that that's like counter to my point. Like the Bucks will have a rivalry with the Hawks because Giannis, and Giannis is the team identity for the most part. If Giannis hadn't supermaxed, what's the Bucks identity right now? You know, like
chaos.
Well, I'd be very sad. Like I would be like my boy Tombkane Tristan there, where like he really loves the Bulls. He's a Bulls fan, but then he's just kind of got to like pick up players to really watch and really key in on in the NBA because like, well, your team's kind of struggling. Your games can kind of get if you're using like I use sports to tap out from reality, much like Age of Sigmar in a more meaningful way. Like if you're using sports to tap out from reality and the sports ball is bad to you too, then you just get in this like horrible cyclical funk, or you have to be like, I can't watch the sport anymore. I need to, because tapping out and watching the sport is not making me happy.
Yeah, on that point, I gotta say, go ahead. The bubble, the basketball that we saw in the bubble, I thought, I mean, I'm not saying anything new, but it was just phenomenal. Like the quality of play, it was so amazing to see that level of play.
Grumble. Speak for yourself, Grumble.
Oh man,
I blame the bubble for the Bucks not going deeper.
Oh sure, yeah. Guys, I didn't watch much of the Bucks, to be honest, in the playoffs, so I didn't really get a good sense of what the hell happened with that.
Chris
team.
Middleton.
It's Coach Bud. Rotation.
Just Coach Bud. Okay.
Like you have Giannis in the playoffs. You play him for 48 minutes if you have to. LeBron James in the playoffs plays for all but like a total of 2 minutes over the course of an entire playoff game. That's what he's there for. You play Giannis the whole time. There's no reason to take him off the floor. You cannot scheme him off the floor. He's not this crazy center where you can just go small and he can't do it. Or he's not like this weird guard where you can go big and like he just can't get around him. You cannot scheme Giannis off the floor. You keep him on there the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer we want to go on this, but like I
haven't done the intro yet. We could go as long as we need, and then I'll do the intro, and then that's the secret. That's the secret to the cold open. Awesome. Shit. Yeah. Telling people how the sausage is made. Go on.
My outside from a distance interpretation of the Bucks is that Bud installed a system that was a pretty fair reflection of modern NBA. You know, pace and space, a number of three-point shooters, and then of course you had Giannis. I mean, to kind of simplify things, to what degree is that actually true? And if true, did it fall apart? Like, did it just not? Was it defense terrible?
He's playing bench guys in normal like game rotations in the playoffs. Like you do not pay Chris Middleton what you pay him. You do not pay
for 20 minutes.
Will now be Giannis' supermax.
Yeah.
Or for 30. Like you don't do it. You do it in the regular season, sure. You know, fine.
Yeah.
It's win or go home. These games count. Like you know, there's not like seeding involved. Like this is it. You were the ones.
And
you got to win 4 games. Like if this game's out of hand, then fine. Like put the guys out. But He's playing regular rotations.
Well, like there was the one game where Giannis got injured, right? And Chris Middleton had to have like an MVP caliber game. And he stayed in and had an MVP caliber game. He
looked like a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. He put up like 50 minutes, 50 like he was
Something
there
crazy.
the whole time. And I'm like
crazy.
And I'm like, do more of that. These like Chris Middleton is very much like many of the NBA like that adage where he's got to find his like rhythm in game. He just has to. And once he heats up, we've all played NBA Jam. He's heating up. Like you gotta get there. And sometimes you just got to shoot into it, right?
Yeah.
And they play good enough D where you can afford it, I think. But
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was last thing. Yeah, I always loved like those Pistons teams loved because they embodied the secret, what Simmons always called the secret of basketball, team basketball. Spurs embodied that. I mean, obviously there's a lot to be said about having a big three or a big four. I mean, the Spurs that's always my go-to. They're my team, as Brennan knows. Obviously they had a Hall of Famer and they had two amazing guys and they usually had a good rotation. But I mean, if you look at like their 2015, it was a deep bench. I mean, that was a deep team. That was a Detroit Pistons type team, but with obviously Timmy Duncan. But anyway, like when I saw the Miami Heat and what they did in the playoffs, they reminded me of old school Pistons, just in that team ball. Old school Spurs.
Super gritty play.
Gritty, hard. Yeah, they played hard, well coached. The culture there in Miami, and they were playing a modern style of NBA.
Yeah. And
that team, they could have won it if they had been healthy. I think against that Lakers team.
Yeah.
Even with those
I don't think they had a chance.
I don't know,
telling
man.
me you're going to stop Anthony Davis for 4 games?
I know. That
you just got to get in his head. He tilts. Anthony Davis tilts, and so like I think you could tilt him personally.
Yeah.
But that's what LeBron is for. LeBron is there for the other three. Like, okay, cool. You beat Anthony Davis. Now you just have to compete against arguably the greatest basketball player in the history of basketball.
Yeah.
Like in the version of the game that he created.
Right.
Like.
Yeah.
Good luck. Like, he's 35 or whatever, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad you added some asterisks there, obviously, but for LeBron. But yeah, no, it's been so incredible to see LeBron get to the point that he got to. I mean, I remember, we probably all remember watching him when he was taking so much shit and when he had that disastrous year against the Mavericks. But yeah, I don't know, just to see it's transcendent what he's been able to do. Mm-hmm. He's a true transcendent athlete.
Yeah, right on. I mean, he's one of those generational talents. All right, now Chat Gang is popping off. We got them even talking sports here, which is always pretty awesome. G-Dad dropping 1,000 RDP to remind everyone, Chat Gang ain't nothing to mess with. Drucifer, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime 7 years of Twitch Prime subs. So thank you so much. And then let's see, King of Heretics here. Talked about hockey, and he has this really cool point. When my team is bad, I like to root for a team to get close and then choke. So like he's talking about like he wants the Buffalo Bills to have a deep run and then just not. I get that too. Like you got to switch to Schadenfreude a little bit when your team's out of it. You're like, okay, I don't care who wins it now. I just don't want the Patriots to be the team that wins it or whatever, right? Like that. So a little bit of that.
You're good to go this year.
Yeah, there you go. And then Kicker says players don't hate teams; they might hate a player. Or I think you mean like fans don't necessarily hate. Maybe players don't hate a team; they hate a player. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that I find it odd to hate an entire team personally. I think there's exceptions, but like it's more like players, and the player has to be like personally a scumbag off the pitch or off the field or whatever. Like it seems weird to hate someone for their play.
The team hate exists in one place and one place only, no matter what. It does it like with no exceptions. It's college sports.
Well,
like that is it does not matter at all. Rivalry weeks in basketball, football, hockey, wrestling, any college sport, rivalry week is just nuts, and it's the best, and I love it.
Well, see, I think that's in a way like that, because the identity of the team, that puzzle is solved there. Like the identity of the team is the school you're going to, right? Like it's your identity and your enjoyment of that team is entrenched rather with that school that you go to. Whereas like what my favorite sports ball teams are the state I happen to be born in. Like, that tends to be most people. I wasn't born in Wisconsin, but I'm a Wisconsin homer. Like, and that has a lot to do with, oh man, I won't even go into the psychology of that. But like, I'm like a pure homer. I think having a rooting interest and like loving the game, and then like having this thing that happens that I have no true investment and impact on. We can talk about like crowds having an impact on the game, sure. But like mostly when I'm sitting at home, watching a game, there is nothing I do that impacts the game wholly, but I am so invested in it. And there is a pure joy in like disliking the other team and like getting out some of that schadenfreude,
Right.
in a way that isn't truly malicious, that'll truly hurt somebody. And I think for me, that's part of the appeal of sports, that sort of like leave it on the field kind of competition.
Totally.
And there was probably a segue in there into Age of Sigmar and competitive play and the platonic state of the game. But first, I got to do the intro. So Chat Gang's here. Chat Gang's been popping off for a while. I am, of course, the magical Mr. Mephisto, the most dangerous man in Age of Sigmar. Welcome to RantCast 78. I'm joined by two of my absolute favorite humans in the entirety of Age of Sigmar and in real life, as a matter of fact.
Such a sweetheart.
Got Tyler Emerson. Tyler, don't call me the godfather of content creation, Emerson.
Goddamn right.
How's it going, man?
Good, buddy.
Good.
Glad to be here.
And the Lord of Death, Brendan Melnick. How's it going?
Fine. I'm okay.
We realized early on that we were all wearing hoodies, so Brendan kind of took one for the team here and protested sleeves.
It was really difficult to convince me, guy who is known for my wearing of all kinds of sleeves in all sorts of public forums. Ignore all the photos you've seen on the internet. It's all fake, deep fake. I clearly love sleeves.
All right, and then we we still got some sports ball chatter going off. You love to see it. But tonight's RantCast episode, we're gonna maybe talk a little bit of TTS a little bit later on. But Tyler, this was an episode you kind of pitched a while back. This is a long time coming. Is there a platonic state of AOS? Was the question you posed. So we're gonna be talking about that. But first, I gotta ask. When you say platonic, do you mean like you don't intend to date Age of Sigmar, or what do you mean there?
Well, I think the concept obviously was based around the platonic ideal. Yeah, is there sort of a space of the platonic ideal, which some folks probably be familiar with that notion.
As in Pluto, like as in the sort of like what is the theoretical or default status of an object, right? So what is a platonic chair would be? What is the most like platonic or theoretical form of a chair? What does that look like, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so it probably, obviously, massive disclaimer, I'm sure to a lot of folks, anything that we say tonight will be complete nonsense. And this is something that is inherently, I don't know, it could be a bit of a contradiction, but for the most part, it's obviously inherently subjective. And it might be useful for us to try to define some values or maybe like some starting definition of what this is, what this looks like. So Brent and I, in particular, we've been talking about this subject for forever since we started talking, which I can't remember when that was, 2017? What was it, 2016?
Yeah, we met at 2017 Adepticon.
Yeah, 2017 Adepticon. So I'm actually, I could rattle on for 15 minutes on my sense of this, but maybe Brendan, what would, like, if you could try to give me your take, and then I'll riff on what you think has been sort of some of the elements of what we've been discussing.
So the other word that we use to kind of describe this in our conversations is like working man's Warhammer.
Right.
Where it's not the way that I known to participate in events, where I'm playing on the leading edge, but rather more the way I host events, right? City Brawl, where it's oriented more towards what I would call the way folks normally play other games of that sort. So like it's that kind of version of self-comp. It's that version of do the thing because it's cool. Like it's very difficult for me to like discern
Yeah.
the definition of it, because it's more of a it's like how the Supreme Court defines pornography.
Right,
You
I'll
don't
know
want to
when I
see
see it. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as we have the discussion, like it will become known to you in the way that we've discussed it in so many words, hopefully fewer, because
Right.
we're not going to be 37 hours.
Right.
I have worked. uh,
That sounds like the way a charity event starts there, Brendan. I won't be doing a rantcast for 7 hours ever again. 6 months later, right? So I just to kind of like push back on this a little bit. Are you saying that like
Yep.
there is an idea that there's a platonic state of AOS, and that is not like some sort of pure like distilled out competitive form of AOS?
I think it's a little of everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the less codified version of Wapaka. The event formerly known as Wapaka, the event formerly known as BryceCon, now known as Ragnarok, where it's codified as 25 points for paints, 25 points for gaming, points for sportsmanship, and previously 25 points for showing up. But I think Bryce was leaning towards like 25 points for narrative things. I don't think he had fully decided last we had talked, but not the more of a gentleman's agreement of kind of what the game is. Like, you're more than welcome to to bring something that punches people in the face, but why? What are the decisions you made to make this a more enjoyable game for everybody? What did you take because you loved it? Why did you choose to step on the brake?
But I see. I really love skeletons made out of dinosaur bones, and so for a while there, I happened to be playing Petrifex Elite when it was one of the more hated armies. Like that might be an
and you're a jerk for it. How dare you?
No, just actually like what you're saying here. Actually, oddly enough, aligns a little bit with something that Greg from Team America, the ETC team, was saying, where he said something along the lines of that's not healthy for the middle tables, like, which I found like to just be this, like, coming from a highly competitive player, very very skilled, he very knowledgeable. That was a really really good episode. That like kind of took me aback, because I fully expected like no, like if it's between the lines it's legal, like, and then you go as hard in the paint as you can between those lines, right? And that's
I mean, for what it's worth, that's generally my opinion. Like so please continue. But...
No. Like you sound like you're on a thought here. Like I just it's interesting that like more of a healthy middle, like the little corollary there between this, like that sort of healthy middle tables and
the magic word, the fat middle.
The fat middle.
The middle class of Warhammer.
Yeah,
exactly. Where
you said Tyler's secret word.
Yes, indeed. But no, just to want to get the disclaimers out. Like, the intention of the discussion is obviously not to say that those who have a spike orientation and are trying to go 5-0, that's not obviously that is a legitimate way to go to a tournament to play AOS. That's something, I mean, really, that all of us do to some degree. I have more familiarity with Brendan's traditional orientation than I do yours, Meph. I mean, my taste is to try to take a 3-2 army and push it to 4-1 at a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, generally.
Yeah.
So keep the gas at like 7 out of 10 and try to get a little more out of it. Like, that's my psychological orientation. But I thought this might be an interesting conversation, because I feel like that's very well defined. We have a very clear understanding of what that orientation looks like in AOS.
Right, and just And just a real quick refresher for those that may not be familiar with the psycho graphic profiles of Magic the
Yeah.
Gathering that we've started to kind of bring into Age of Sigmar. Spike
Right.
is usually viewed as the one who wants to win it all. More accurately, Spike is something is a psychological orientation that has something to prove. And Timmy then, which is like the ones that are usually thought of as the like play the big dragons and have the most stompy fun. They usually wish to experience something, and then Johnny, which is what I usually am more aligned with. Like I'm a bit of a Johnny Spike and a little like a big splash of Timmy in there too. But I'm very much a Johnny. Johnny wants to express something. So you know, I want to express that I like Nagash is still viable. Then I'll take a Nagash list and I'll try to like tinker that to the most I possibly can, or whatever it may be. Or I have a combo I wish to solve, and
Yeah, 100%.
so
Yeah, totally.
no, I personally you talk about like the gas. I talk about it as gears. You know, like imagine a 5-speed like.
Right.
That's because it correlates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the amount of rounds we tend to play. You know, I consider there to be like, you know, people who are always kind of playing in the 5th gear. I'm usually in the 4th or maybe the 3rd gear, depending. If I really love something, I'll drop down to the 3rd gear. But if something is just like hey, whoa, my boy, he played Beastclaw Raiders just for years, whether they like win, sleet, snow, or shine. Like he was playing Beastclaw Raiders. I'm like, you know, I took 2 nerfs to LON, and I'm like, I can't play this army anymore because like it was just like as it exists, as my army existed. I'm like, I can't play this anymore. You know, like I'm just like there's skeletons plus Nagash isn't a list. I got to abandon ship. Like I love something. I will love my armies passionately, but if I can't see like a road to victory. Like, I don't mind taking a loss, but I want to feel like I'm in control. Like, I have some control. And when I'm like, I don't know how players out there. And I do think there are a lot more Age of Sigmar players there who are, like, ride or die with their armies than, like, me. Which I think is worth noting for this sort of notion of the Platonic state, right? Like, if you're ride or die with your army and you haven't gotten attention in, like, 3 or 4 iterations of the game, be that, like, winter FAQs or GHBs or whatever that is, you can start to feel pretty lonely, right? Pretty left out in the cold with your army, and the game starts to maybe you don't. I'm seeing it through my perspective, but like for me, that starts to feel like a very isolated experience and not very fun. But.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and there's so many different ways we can try to define this. I mean, I thought what Brendan said was generally a pretty good expression of at least one aspect, one orientation around this. And yeah, because this is squishy, it's hard to define. I mean, so you mentioned Wapaka, and I also personally think of Brew City Brawl. I've yet to go. Gonna go last year, but couldn't. I know. But anyway,
can't imagine why. I don't know what happened.
Work keeps getting in the way. But anyway, so for example, just give maybe it might be helpful to give.
I think it was the pandemic, Tyler.
What? Oh crap! God, it's so crazy. This year feels like 2 years. Like
no. The joke for a long time I've often referred to like months in terms of years. When people like sub to my channel here, the joke formed that like it's because COVID and time is meaningless now. Like that I can't track months versus years. It really has been. It has been a long year. I think we're all feeling it, and I'm already wishy-washy with time as is. Like I am not like I don't know what day of the week it is unless I'm forced to via work or something like that. If you just couldn't tell you what time it is right now unless I like I have no. It could be 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. and I wouldn't know. Like in the winter, like I can't tell you.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, what I was getting at with Bruce City is he and I had a number of conversations even before he started that event. And one of the things that we were discussing was, okay, we have these awards that are well-defined, that are very common. Best general, sort of overall winner of the tournament, best painter, best of your alliance, order, destruction, etc. You know, generally the well-known categories. But there's obviously other types of potential awards or incentives that you could put out. that are, and those awards would express the orientation of many players. That there's not really an incentive right now in most tournaments, so certainly at the time when we were talking about this. So one that we talked a lot about were players of this type that like to take the 2-3 or 3-2 and then get as much out of it as they can. Try to go get that 3-2, that 4-1. And what was the name of that award, Brendan, you came up with?
The Special Snowflake Award.
Special Snowflake Award. Okay. I thought, was hard mode? Was that one? Or was that the same
Yeah,
thing?
that was one of the Age of Sigmar hard mode, aka the Special Snowflake Award.
Okay. Right.
It's got some titles. And obviously we've added more like esoteric things over the course of the last couple years. Like we have the D&D party, we have Monster Mash, things like that. But yes, this was the Age of Sigmar, aka hard mode, aka the Special Snowflake Award. That's what this was built around.
I like
this conversation.
I like Mr. Deekhouse here in chat saying, I try to take a 5-0 army and win a single game with it. Nice.
That's a special kind of hard mode, yes.
But yeah, so he had, again, I had no idea which brew city it was, but Brendan told me, no, I'd seen the results of one of the brew cities, and I saw Relian took Nighthawk. And, Relian usually takes a really strong army because he's trying to win tournaments. Awesome. But he took Nighthawk. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Oh, maybe he was going after the hard mode award or whatever it was called at the time. And he went 4-1 with Nighthawk at the time when it was generally considered to be pretty crap. And the fact that Relian felt like, okay, there's a structure. I don't know. I'm interpreting. This wasn't what was going on in his own mind, but like maybe he saw that, okay, there's this incentive. Actually, I don't know. I know Domus, I think, did the same thing, right, with one of your tournaments. Domus took
he's done it every year that we've
okay.
had it.
Yeah. So I think Domus is a great.
Something special and great. His first year, he did it was like a mixed order list where he played Alariel. He played an Orion counts as Alariel that he converted up to be that. In his second year, he played Dragon Ogres, just all Dragon Ogres. He played the Thunderscorn Beast Herd Battalion, and it was all Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shaggoths.
Nice.
And he played Brad in that last round, and we had the hardest time deciding like who to pick between the two of them. Like, it took us ages to make that decision.
No, so I'd like to just, while we got a quiet moment here, I want to reiterate that this episode isn't intended to judge the way anyone chooses to have their fun with Age of Sigmar. That is the last thing I ever ever platform on Aegis on RantCast. Like I think that play the game your way, have fun with it. But this as a good thought experiment. That's why we're kind of talking about this, I think. So. You kind of mentioned like Wapaka, obviously the Snowflake Award, and I do think Midwest Meltdown is a very good example of this. Like, because Domus himself is such a personality, his personality is very much just a part of that event, and he has this very very hobby forward, very sportsmanship, very sporting player forward type of person. And obviously narrative, I think, is becoming a lot more ubiquitous too, where it's not just you're not just playing like LON, you're playing your LON. You're not just playing Slaanesh, you're playing your Slaanesh, right? Like, everyone's got their, from when you select your color palette to maybe you name the list something cheeky or amusing. I think you've started to put your own personality in it. I think even the hardest nosed player in the world has some psychological pull towards, like, if two armies are 5-0, just easily the best, you do some meta prediction analytics, in the end you're going to have a psychological pull towards one or the other for some personal reason, right?
Right.
Like, I think that's inescapable. Even the fact that, like, competitive players who end up in Age of Sigmar, you choose Age of Sigmar over a different game because there's something about this game that draws you to it. I don't think it's because you think it's easy winnings, right?
Right.
There's games out there.
I've played a couple folks who thought that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Made him real sad.
Yeah, there's a couple games out there that have like actual cash prize pools with that have like you'd find it easier to win enough money to come out ahead financially in those things if all you care about is winning. So, it's I mean side events at like a legacy at a Magic GP is a good way if you just want to put in the requisite amount of time, you can get pretty good and win boxes that way. Like, so I think so once you end up in Age of Sigmar, there's a reason you're here. Community.
Yeah, it's a really strong baseline. Yeah, the baseline is
it's the money.
Is really
we're here for the money. You know, like you're in it for the money. You rotate
the power, the fame.
Yeah, the fame.
It's just the throngs of hangers on that follow me around in public.
Yeah.
There's a crowd outside my house 24/7.
Yeah.
This is why
Yeah. We make content about Age of Sigmar because we want to appease the algorithm the most anyone possibly can on YouTube. You know,
Sure.
Minecraft is for like easy mode. You gotta milk the algorithm with Age of Sigmar content. That's how you really win big.
Absolutely.
Right. All the best people are here for the money and the fame. So yeah. So I'm just saying that like there's a reason you're in Age of Sigmar, and I think that this notion that there might be this draw towards the middle as more of a theoretical ideal or baseline. There's something to it, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. So maybe we could talk about some more examples. So we talked about the awards. You know, this idea of having awards that
incentivize, and this is around a point I think I was going to make. Maybe a little bit later on, but it ties in right now. The pack to me, I think, is what really sets the pace of how your tournament's going to be, and in your pack, you are going to theoretically outline, hey, these are the trophies available at my event, and Brew City, I believe that was 2018, the one we were talking about there, was for me one of the most affirming events. That kind of like bracketed off my first like full calendar year of like a tournament. Nearly every.
It was 19. Yeah.
Was it 19? Yeah. Okay. 19. Time is meaningless.
We're a year behind. See, the one I was thinking of that I didn't go to, I thought was 2019, but it's 2020. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I missed you there, man. For me that was like I played my pet list. It wasn't the hardest nosed version of LON. You know, still just Nagash plus 100 boys. I top 10 to 50 person event, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Like I was in it to be I think if I beat Tobin, I think I win best death. No, I would have lost best death to Relian, but you can't feel bad about that, right?
Yeah.
But I was in it like in it staring at a 4-1, like top 10, won best sports. Like for me that was a really like sort of affirming event, and the fact that like I had spent a whole year playing like Nagash, walking up to tables, people going ugh Nagash again, and like I remember I tell this story pretty often. Like Seinfeld has the like what I call the oh really moment where like if he's once introduced as the best comedian in the world, and then like the whole audience collectively crossed its arms, leaned back in its chair, and went oh really. So I had a moment like that where I was on TGA pretty heavily going into sort of that tournament year. And they're like, oh, death players have the worst sports scores. Why is this? And I went, oh, really? And I'm like, I'm going to be the friendliest fucking death player. I like that Brendan raises his hand. He's like, that's me.
It was me. Like that was my fault. like very seriously, that was partly my fault.
Well,
I got a 2 on sportsmanship at that event, and I really pulled the numbers down.
Was that so going into that year would have been the year you won best death at Adepticon, because that would have been right before the LON tome came out. That was when I was doing my research. It's interesting how small the world starts to feel when you connect. It's all related, and I got my Charlie board like behind me.
That was also on TGA how my list made it up there, and they're like, "This was just garbage. How did he win?" Like,
So for me that was like, and I remember looking at the pack and seeing the trophies in it, and the one that really jumped out was like the Snowflake Award, but it was also like the FAQs where like you cannot bring a real turtle. You know, like for your Idoneth Deepkin army and stuff like that, where the pack really flavored the event for me. And I think that like this notion of Platonic AOS starts with the pack, and part of that is the trophies to incentivize, because you got to make it real, you got to codify it, you got to make it real for people. It's not just enough to say, hey, this is the casual event, or not casual event. This is the Platonic AOS event. It's not just enough to say that. You got to incentivize it. You got to show it. You got to codify it.
Yeah, dude, yeah. It's one of the ongoing conversations in the community over the years, and I'm sure before even AOS, with Warhammer Fantasy tournaments and maybe some 40K tournaments or events. Yeah, this general conversation that often gets characterized as comp, and like I was thinking about doing an event locally. I was asking myself these questions, like I'm not that interested in comp as traditionally defined, but I would like to experiment with promoting a certain spirit, a certain set of values, just as an experimentation, if nothing else, to see what happens.
Well,
what kind of list. Yeah.
This goes with just a basic psychological sort of understanding of positive reinforcements versus negative reinforcement. Telling someone don't do that is generally more frowned upon than saying, even in parenting, is generally more frowned upon than trying to like display options and incentivizing the correct choices, right?
Yeah, totally. Right.
So that's just a and now I've talked sports ball. I've told people how to play Age of Sigmar, and now I've mentioned how to parent. Oh God.
Go down the list.
Yeah, like
the internet loves all those things. It's fine.
No, but like it's in line with the I don't like comp in a general sense, especially in Age of Sigmar, because the game, by the time I've painted, collected, and got my army where I want it, right?
Yeah.
Something could have changed to where my army is just incidentally amazing out of nowhere. We watched like kind of IJ. This happened with IJ. You're like, when do things ever accidentally get great in Age of Sigmar? I'm like, IJ for like 3 months was one of the casino wall was insanity. Like just for that block. So things like so now you suddenly find yourself in the discussion for an army that needs to be comped. And like I put the money down and I bought my army. I should get to play with my toys. Slaanesh players come to mind, like the Vince Venturellas of the world, where like he's just waiting his whole life for Slaanesh to get like a new Keeper of Secrets and be back in the discussion again, and he takes the army out, and he's just like his eyes are aglow with childlike glee as he puts this display board down, and then like now we're talking about banning Slaanesh as a hashtag trending on the internet. Like I don't like that so much.
100%.
So like I think you got to find other ways to incentivize your event, and I think that along the line we're kind of all in a little bit in agreement here.
Yeah, definitely. Another recent interesting example I saw on TTS, I can't remember what it's called, like Santa's Workshop or something. Adam Mumford, who's been organizing a number of TTS events this year. I think he worked with Darren, maybe some others, but they've created a bag full of lists, oddball list, like 2 dragons and
Double
a
dragon.
Frostheart Phoenix, and Staunch Defender on Frostheart Phoenix and Stormcast with men, or like the kind of list that you wouldn't normally see, and then you get basically somewhat randomly assigned one of these lists, and that's the list that you've got to play. And I think you've got ways that you can opt out, maybe get a couple chances, a couple rolls of the dice to get a list that you like a little bit more. But yeah, that's happening this weekend. I love that. I think that's an amazing idea. Like it gives people a chance to play lists they might not ever play, and they'll be playing lists that they might not ever play. So anyway, yeah, I think to me that's part of this general space that we're talking about here.
Yeah,
as one very different kind of event.
Having your friend make a list for you going to event, like Bryce did for Brendan and Midwest Meltdown,
Yeah.
Like there's.
And I was the best baseball player there.
So there's things like that where you have, I think that like a system in the pack where you incentivize, like maybe you even write a specific list, or like you could theoretically give points to a type of list, like tournament points to a type of list. Like I maybe don't like that quite as much because that's impacting the tournament thing, and then that's that becomes gamey. But like a
Yeah.
trophy is pretty innocuous, I think. Like it's a 3D printed piece of plastic or a
Yeah.
glass coaster ordered from Amazon that your friend like etches for you, whatever it is, right? Like, but it's something that you
absolutely.
physically walk home with, and you're like, yeah, I took the silly list, I crushed it.
So yeah, we've talked about different types of events, different types of awards. The critical role of packs. Okay, thanks. We have talked. Yeah, if I mentioned lists, sorry, I got distracted there. So another one is in terms of lists is I think a lot about variety pack lists that are a good expression of a faction's model range. Now there obviously are exceptions to where you could have someone who's running trolls because they love trolls and they just want to run a troll list or a squig list, and that's awesome. That's cool. It's thematic. Usually those tend to not be the greatest lists in the world, and
Except for snakes right now. If you love snakes and you happen to be spamming snakes,
which we're gonna talk about. Are amazing. I love it. Yeah, they're the most fun I've had of AOS all year.
Yeah.
They're so cool. Yeah, but so like these variety pack lists, and so OBR might be an interesting example right now. Like some of what is it? Catacross, Cavalos, maybe a Bone Shaper. You got a unit of ponies. You got your Mortek Guard. You've got a crawler. You've got that.
Well,
kind of
I mean,
mixed
I'm
arms.
forced to take at least either two units of Mortek Guard or 2 units of Cavalos, and then one of the other. I can only be so Neapolitan with Ossiarch Bone Reapers here. I only have the 2 battle line
Gotcha.
options and no
That's fair.
battle line if whatsoever. Do
Right.
KO have more battle line options than us right now? Actually, I
Yes.
believe. Oh, what a world we live in. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Gun haulers, frigates, balloon boys, and regular guys, and I think the Thunderers can under special conditions. They've got a lot of if. They have with their ifs, they have more than us.
Disgusting.
but yeah, so when we've had, again, this is not a topic that there's been a fair amount of conversation over the years. I'm curious your guys' view on this. So when I think about AOS, I don't necessarily think that combined arms list or mixed arms list are usually the most, let's say, competitive. I think there have been some exceptions. Like when I think of the exceptions to that, it's Tzeentch, Seraphon, and Skaven. Original Skaven.
Cities.
Original recipe.
I'd say cities.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of loosely describing what I would call toolbox armies.
Right.
Toolbox armies.
The premise. Sorry, Meph. The premise is that toolbox armies tend to promote more Platonic AOS on average, as long as they're not overpowered, but because they tend to be more dynamic. You're playing in all the phases. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. No. This is great. So I mean, I like toolbox armies, not necessarily from like the Platonic thing. I've only been thinking about recently since you brought it up. Several months ago, years ago, however long it was. I don't know. It's COVID. I've been thinking about it, but like toolbox armies, I've always really liked because it felt like the thing I value, which is agency in my play. Like always thinking that I'm in it. This is that. Okay, if my army is just garbage tier and like I show up and I make all the right decisions and I just lose because I can never compete with the current like caliber of the armies because my army just fell out of favor or whatever, right? I happen to have fallen in love with Dark Elves, and Dark Elves win. Like, I'm just trying really hard to make those Dark Elf cities lists work, but no. Toolbox lists, though, for me, they always have like a great deal of agency on both sides of the table, and so that's why I really, really like them because to really maximize a toolbox list, you have to understand Age of Sigmar fundamentally. You have to know what other armies are trying to do to beat you, and you have to stop them from doing it because you go into your toolbox and you go, I've got the thing to stop this if I use the tool here.
100%.
And on the flip side, you're always just bad dice or like a really good counter strategy away from them taking out your legs, your tool that you need to beat them, and now you're like, oh no. And I really enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking about like last year's NashCon. Oh, what's up?
I saw Alex in chat, which is why I used Dark Elves, and he's like, Dark Elves are great. You shut your mouth. Yeah, Dr. Alex Milonis.
You've had him on your show, right?
Yeah. For
Yeah, nice. I
now,
was thinking
two of
about
my
that.
favorite episodes. So
Very cool. Yeah, I was thinking I watched some of you guys. Yeah.
he
But no, NashCon. I brought this weird toolbox Stormcast list with 2x3 Kurnoth hunters that we know you look at it on paper and you're like, what the hell? Like, how does this work? What is
did you
going on
play
here?
Ty? Did you play Ty?
Yeah, I played Ty.
Yeah,
And
Ty was.
I beat his butt.
Yeah, he was like,
Just
I'm
one
really
loss.
afraid of that list. I'm really afraid. He's just like so like I remember the day. He's like the day before
Yeah.
or whatever. He's like, I'm so I don't want to
No,
play.
no,
Ty. Go ahead.
I barely, I got fairly lucky and won that game. I barely won that game. Really had no business winning it, but anyway, yeah. So, but no, yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, a lot of lists like that, they can tend to be, it's a razor's edge that you're walking on. Yeah, and that's awesome. They tend to be really challenging. Again, as long as they're not, let's say, Seraphon right now, where far too much is too cheap, and you get too much stuff in your list.
Well,
It takes away.
they're what I call a power tools list. Like the normal tool, you just have like regular tools, and they're just like
Right.
sawzaws and like freaking piston hammers and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, totally.
um,
Yeah.
um,
Melnick, any thoughts on this? Makes sense.
Like what specifically would you want my input on? Like weird lists that are mixed arms. Like I actually find that more often than not, the lists that win 5-0 games are are tilted more skew, right? They're maximizing the things that can be maximized.
Yeah.
But it's not difficult to go 4-1 with mixed arms with an army that on the table, looks like it belongs on the table.
yeah, more of a Neapolitan build, as I like to say, where you're
Yeah.
as party to this LRL. When I look at that army, and a little bit of a tangent. Welcome to RantCast. If you've never been here before, we do this often. LRL to me looks like an army that wants you to like. It's got 3 battle line options, and it says here's the run fast, here's the here's the guard, and here's the archers. Like that army is like, man, you got to take 3 battle line. I've got 3 different. Like it just feels like an army that wants me to play it that way, and
and you can. You're allowed to. And you don't feel like an idiot for doing it.
Right. And that's a good. I think that what I'm trying to say is like that feels like a good design direction to be pushing in the direction of.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, again, first use of the word bias tonight, but they are. It's one of the best design books, in my opinion.
Wow.
That
Okay.
they came out with in quite a while. It's internally well balanced. You have a range of options within clear constraints. Relatively small number of units. I mean, it's 4 battle line technically because the Stone Guard can be battle line, of course, in Alloy, but sure, yeah. And yeah, you're generally incentivized, unless you choose otherwise, to run a toolbox army. But they have some healthy constraints. Number 1 being mobility, and unless you're running a heavy Dawn Rider Lance, pony army, which is going to have a lot of challenges, I think. Maybe somebody will be able to make that work, which would be amazing. But
yeah. I mean, see, a lot of people's read on LRL, and I'll probably be doing an LRL episode here coming up because someone told me I need to finish the Hypeisode now. The Alphasode series with like now that they've been in the wild for a little bit. Like, what's our read on them? Because there's all the build up and release and stuff, and I haven't talked about.
I'd love to talk about them a little bit tonight if we can.
Yeah, 100%. Should we maybe pin this and circle back to it later?
Yeah, so I've been testing them all year, and they're really interesting.
All right, all right. We'll talk about LRL a little bit later. Then we'll continue talking Platonic AOS, unless this was a perfect segue, and we can talk about LRL right now.
I mean, yeah, those are anything else come to mind in terms of what we could chat? It's a huge subject, obviously, with this notion, and I mean, part of the byline is that there's many different ways you can go at it. In terms of bliss, in terms of how you're structuring events. This toolbox concept really comes to mind because I tend to think that Brendan, as you just said, a lot of AOS can promote skew builds if you're trying to go 5-0. Whereas if you're wanting to have a little more maybe dynamism, working in all phases, etc., then toolbox armies can promote that.
And to add to that, like, there's a reason Age of Sigmar doesn't have a rule of 3. And there's a reason that 40k does. Because my understanding is it's much more easy to exploit the things on the extreme end in 40k than it is in Age of Sigmar, even on the like the winning side of it. Think about if you applied the rule of 3 to like even the most high-end butt-kicking tournaments that there ever was. How many lists like actually change where you limit 3 of the same kind of
Yeah.
MSU Deepkin, okay. Well, they're perfectly fine if you take 3 units with the number of each kind of eel that you want. Okay,
Yeah.
cool, fine. What? Maybe Zinch, where they couldn't go MSU horrors.
Yeah, I mean, right
really,
now, Lumineth
like,
comes to
how
mind.
many lists change, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many lists have 4 of like the same unit that gets them to the win condition? That isn't an army that spams models already, right? Like, like a Bone Splitter's army.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
good
fine
question.
if they want to have
Absolutely.
4 units of Savage Orcs.
Right.
The game just naturally incentivizes mixed armies. Now you can put all your points into like 2 or 3 iterations of the same unit, and like that's all you have. But you're not going to have the rule of 2. Like that's not,
right.
like that becomes a game design.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking down the list here. So Fire Slayers could be an example of where you might see 3x20 Hearthguard Berserkers. Lumineth, I think, are an example. Certainly, some folks are doing the one drop.
Sentinels,
Yeah, 40 Wardens, 80
Or
Sentinels.
sorry, Wardens, the tons of shooty, right? Like
Sentinels are the
that
shooting.
list is
Wardens
still
are the
blockers.
Yeah.
Without the 4th unit of Sentinels.
Say that again.
I said that that list with 80. Okay, you only take 6. The list is still really good.
Yeah.
Okay, it still does the thing.
No, you need maximum shoot with that list. I don't know what you're talking about, Brendan. Let's see. Chat admiring my new headset setup. Thank you, Tristan.
Pro gamer status. Check me out.
It's
you just get a couple. You get all these Twitch followers, and you gotta like go pro gaming, and you're streaming Cyberpunk, and you're taking clips of all your crashes. Like, I don't even.
How did you know I'm doing that?
You told me.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I thought that was like a secret that I was gonna do like a Benny Hill style video of because I recently learned how to edit. So I made one of my smaller condensed shows, the on rants as it were, the things I'm trying to keep under 15 minutes to, hey, this is my style, but here's a little single topic, unrelated thing.
Nice. Awesome.
And I did like one edit just to like kind of prove I could. I'm like, I can edit now. Like edited Mephisto is probably the worst thing. I think my charm is that I'm verbose. Thank you. But
no, that's awesome, man.
So yeah. But yeah, shout outs to Chat Gang, supporting me and stuff like that. So we got the XLR set up now, so I hope it sounds a lot better and you're enjoying the shows. So we kind of mentioning lists as a state, and I just wanted to add like a little bit of an addendum. Just like with like sort of like horde lists don't seem to be the way to go with our game anymore. Like we're MSU. I think shooting's pushed us a little bit towards MSU, and there's a couple of armies that are like pure horde. When I say horde, I actually mean 100+ models. I should clarify. The 100+ bodies, like the sort of like Gits, and there's one I'm missing.
Beasts of Chaos.
Right. Beasts of Chaos.
I mean, Seraphon, you might see it with mass skinks.
Right. But that's kind of like one of the ways we've kind of like shifted away from that, which was very much of an old Hammer style where every army has 100 models in it, and we've kind of shifted it toward that like sub 100 style, with having a couple of exceptions for people who just really want 100 models on the table, right? Like there are people out there who just love that. I think similarly, the opposite direction would be like the pure monster mash armies. So like you have just like I run five Stonehorns, that's my army, or Sons of Behemoth, or even if you went like did some Flesh Eater Courts, like 3 dragon kind of shenanigans, right?
5 dragon, but yeah.
Well, 3 and come on, don't get crazy here. You're still gonna buy an Arch Regent and and some ghouls. I don't know what but let's not go way crazy here on the skew. Having those skews on either side.
I'm not a monster.
Night Haunt would be, I think Night Haunt is a finesse horde army, which is a little counterintuitive, which is why I don't think it performs quite as well.
That's an interesting one. I mean, I've always I need to look more at the Night Haunt data to the degree that it's out there recently. I know Matt Terrell has done really well with Night Haunt. Of course,
he was on RantCast. He deposited some of his knowledge and insights on how to win with it. So
okay, I'll have to check that episode out. I mean,
it was a great episode. He's a really, really good guest. I can't believe I've never talked to him before that moment. I'm like, wow, this is a guy I need to talk more to. So
because I've heard Ash McEwen talk a lot about his MSU Night Haunt style. So he'll have a lot of 10 body units of Chain Rasp and maybe multiple tenors of the Bladegeist Revenants. But yeah, generally playing in waves and multiple opportunities to roll the 10 plus or 9 plus if you've got the battalion or whatever it is.
That was the first tip Matt gave, was like, don't worry about your drops. Like it's kind of like and just kind of allowing yourself to be liberated in once you. I don't know if I would have to think longer on this than I'm willing to commit to it right now, and maybe you guys can bounce back at me here. I think we might be a little too drop obsessed in Age of Sigmar. I think it has a lot to do with the priority roll, but getting perfect data on your opponent's drops, where you're out dropping, it's always like, oh, I go first, or I choose who goes first. But learning to play in the space where you're like, I kind of don't care who goes first. I want to have optimal board position and control and know where all your stuff is, might actually be a way, especially with MSU, that we're kind of tipping a little bit now. Just food for thought. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. I mean, we're probably pretty good on the Platonic conversation because we've got a lot of discussions tonight, and Brendan has a hard cutoff. So yeah, maybe a little bit on that, and that also relates. I mean, I'd be curious your guys' views at a high level without going too far into the priority role. I mean, that's an ongoing conversation. I was chatting with real quickly with Vince about this last week, and I was telling them that I don't know of that many in-depth explorations of that topic, of that question. Is the priority role still a net positive in AOS?
I think so. I still think so personally.
So I feel like there's a lot. Well, there's an interesting discussion there to be had about why, if so, and maybe why not. So yeah. Anyway, but would love to hear your guys' views on that.
I used to tip the opposite way. I used to be like, why isn't this you go, I go? Like I used to. I was actually convinced. Imagine that, someone having an opinion that they change. No,
how dare you?
I know.
The internet.
I'm a fucking monster. No, I like it. I like the hype factor alone. It makes it more of a compelling game. People stay engaged longer with it because of they think they have a chance, whether it's true or not. They think they have a chance if they win that double turn and that priority. And maintaining the engagement at the table a little bit longer, I think, is a net positive. That alone, kind of flipped me on it. Plus, so shooting in check would be the other way. It keeps shooting a little bit more in check in our game.
Yeah, I mean, well, Brendan, what are your thoughts on that? We come back to drops, but real quickly on priority roll.
Yeah, so I still love the priority roll. The reason being is it's one of those elements where it's easy to learn the game of Sigmar. It's very difficult to master it. And to master the game of Age of Sigmar, I believe for a large portion of the game, you have to be able to be a person who can plan for 2 different results simultaneously.
Right.
And some folks really struggle with that, and I get it. It's not a normal thing to think that way, where you're putting yourself physically in a position with two plans, with just above a coin flip kind of result. Gain momentum, or you can gain it right into those next turns, or you can have those situations where you got to sell out and go, this has got to be the turn I'm
The playing to the out, like where you're like, I gotta play to this out right now. I gotta go for it, because if I don't,
Right.
Yeah, go on. Couldn't continue, Brendan.
Then that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like it for that reason, where you don't have other games where you are forcing people to think in that creative space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that to me is probably the most salient. I mean, I love your point as well, Meph. Yeah, I played a fair amount of 40K, particularly when 8th came out a few years back, and I mean, I enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it. It was a different experience in terms of just that you go, I go dynamic, in terms of predictability, in terms of positioning, ranges, just the capacity to generally know what's going to happen and what I need to do to keep things safe, etc. And it's less dynamic. It was a little less interesting, and yeah, I find the priority role more the double turn more compelling, more challenging in AOS than the you go I go. Now, I think there are, I don't know if there are more people, but there are plenty of folks I know who are out there, my local community and in general, who used to like the priority role and now think that there's too much damage output, let's say, that the pain is greater nowadays than historically. Let's say in the 2016 to 2018 period than 2019 to 2020 now.
Damage just went up, and it has nothing to even do with the new army releases, which have like a good damage output. The redundant saves going away just made the game that more lethal. It made it cleaner. It was a band-aid that probably needed to be ripped off, but you're more vulnerable to mortals now than you ever were before. When you had your mortal wound save, like I would say, like a 4-up, and then you had that like 6-up or 5-up. Like you feel the difference in the game. So, I mean, it's more lethal than it's ever been. I can see that point. I can see it. I guess my pushback on that isn't to throw the baby out with the bathwater on the priority roll. It's to drop the damage. Like,
yeah, I can see that.
But like, how do you put that like cat back in the bag, right? The fact that the damage has just kind of increased. That's a philosophical question. I don't have an answer for it. Like,
yeah, and I mean, certainly
you need a big bag.
Sorry, Tyler. It sounded like you had a thought.
Well, yeah, that I mean, I would much rather have an ecosystem that was more primary offense than primary defense.
100%.
And so that's, I think, thankfully, the ecosystem that we're in right now. And I mean, we could have a little discussion about shooting as well in relation to that damage output and the priority roll, to what shooting slash splash or range mortal wound damage, to what degree is that impacting this feeling that I feel like anecdotally, which could be completely worthless, probably is, but anecdotally at least, I've heard many more people in the last couple of years tell me that they think the priority roll is more of a problem in AOS because of this damage increase, and shooting over the last 12 or so months has been a part of that as well. With KO and Seraphon, KO, yeah.
If KO gets the double turn, you're off the table for the most part.
It can be pretty painful.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, of course, if they don't, they could be potentially screwed.
Right. They can't win. If you, barring matchups and dice, right? Like, for the most part, if you're going in, you're both on your A tier, S tier armies, know the matchup going in, equal skill level, and they lose that priority roll. They're in a lot of pain. They kind of have to stick their neck out. They kind of have to still be roughly in one place. Like, it can be really punishing for them. So like, the priority turn giveth the priority roll giveth and the priority roll taketh away. But I think from a player engagement standpoint is really what I think about. I think about from an esports standpoint. I like to talk about V Trigger and Street Fighter. I'm not sure your familiarity with with Street Fighter. Okay, there's something in meter. You have a meter burn. You burn the meter. Like you look at someone's health bar, almost gone, but like but they've got the full meter bar, and they burn the meter, and they just start doing tons of damage, and they fight their way back into the game. Like when you watch esports, which is some people really truly want T-sports. One of the biggest moments of engagement, why Street Fighter is one of the biggest games on the planet, and always kind of has been for esports, just revenue, interest, and so on and so forth, is that hype factor. That player and audience engagement. You walk up to a table and you walk up to a table and they're rolling dice for hitting and shooting and stuff. You walk away. You walk up to a table and someone's about to roll the priority roll. You look at the scorecard. You go, I'll watch this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that engagement, and then you'll watch the first couple things that happen. Then you'll keep walking through the room. But like you'll stick around for that priority roll. It's that engagement aspect. I think is healthy.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. I still personally come out as it's a net positive. I mean, played a lot of TTS this year, and the overwhelming majority of my games are not dictated by the priority roll. It's dictated by bad choices or good choices. Generally by, have I minimized, to what degree have I minimized my bad choices?
And that's the thing that I'd say to the folks in your community who are saying, oh, well, if KO gets the double turn and this gets the double turn, then it's all over. There's nothing different there. If when KO came out and KO had the double turn, it was over then. It was over when KO had the double turn when they were bad.
Yeah.
It was a little bit different because they had other issues to cope with. But that's not new. When Tzeentch got the double turn, when Tzeentch was change host, that game was over.
Yeah.
When Daughters of Khaine got the double turn and peak Daughters of Khaine, that game was over. That's not new for the stuff that lives on the high end. That's 6 years in the making. Okay. Like, does it make it right? Not necessarily, but that's not new to this environment. You get double turned by Iron Jaws in plenty, and that's the game too.
Well, I mean, what you're saying there, I think a lot of people, it would be easy to conclude that's a big problem if that's true. What you just said.
I mean, it is like that's like those things aren't new.
Like that.
There have been people with bad armies and bad situations who get the double turn, and that game ends too. Like, it's all about the decisions that the other person has made as well. Like, if you've put yourself in a position where you are able to be double turned by a KO player, some of that at some point is part of your doing. Like, part of the reason you're in that situation is you. Like, you made the decision to not bring an army that can play one.
Right. Some of that comes back, to list design and choices and all that. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing I like to kind of hammer home with people when I'm giving advice is decision making in the game starts at list building.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't just start, like people think that like that like it starts at deployment. Your decision making began when you selected your list, and I think that can even kind of segue us back to the pack and armies, which is kind of what we've been trying to get back to here. Telling people incentivizing you to bring the toolbox is going to give you that. If you're on a skew list, something very, very elite, you're not going to have the bodies to stop KO from doing what they want to do on the table. You need to be able to push them out that 9 inches plus weapon range on when they drop down. Or you're sitting duck at deployment, right? Like if you don't have the bodies to simply do that. On the flip side, if you're someone like Beasts of Chaos and you could stash half your army off the table, and then also have ample bodies to just crowd, they have no place to drop.
Right. They can be really low drop too, right?
Their battalions allow everything in it. You could be a 2. KO struggles right now where if they don't outdrop you, if they can't dictate that, they tend to be in a pretty bad place. I don't mind KO as the exception if KO is the exception to like the fundamentals of the game of Age of Sigmar, and they're the exception, I don't mind that. It's when we have like multiple KOs type armies start to build up, like we did with a Flamer, 2 teleports a turn Flamer change host. Right?
Sure, right.
Like when you have that, and what Seraphon are doing right now, you now have like 3 exceptions to the rule as opposed to just the one. If it's the one and that's just their shtick, you can take a very deft hand on tuning that.
Mm-hmm.
If you start to have multiple, it starts to shift the fundamentals of the game, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah. Having experienced a lot of the shooting this year in TTS playing, have some thoughts on that, which is that it's actually in the aggregate, I don't think it's too bad, and there are clearly very clear opportunities to fix things, like the one-drop shootcast. I would say is pretty unhealthy for the game.
Well, you just up that battalion cost. You just up that battalion
We've waited
cost.
so long for that battalion.
I know. We did. Yeah, it's the perfect example. Be careful what you wish for, at least for me. I mean, I have a little more of a soul than Melnick does, depending on the day of the week. But yeah. Did you run it at a tournament, the one drop?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. But you're going to.
I probably won't at this point.
Right. Maybe next week we'll determine it. But yeah, just at the points. So yeah,
you don't
generally that.
You don't need to touch the actual Stormcast like units themselves. Just up the battalion
100%.
cost. Just move. Just there you go. Easy fix. Like.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So that addresses that. I mean, KO. Easy fixes there. I mean, personally, I'm inclined to look first and foremost at the Warp Lightning Vortex.
I think that's where everyone's looking right now.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, Vince has I think one of the strongest takes. I don't mean strongest as in like most like well argued, but just like the most fiery take is just like Vortex should never been printed. Take it out the game type thing. Like,
sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that like. I think you just kind of got to revert some of their points changes. They were already strong before. It was a little bit, for me, it felt like a little bit of the Fire Slayers thing, where I was looking at Fire Slayers, I'm like, this army's already great, but people are doing it wrong by building the single Death Star, like 30-man.
Yeah.
I'm like, if they just started taking 220s or like 220s and some utility or heaven forbid 320s, like they would be a much better army. And then the points changes come out, and I'm like, they just told you have to do that. And I'm like,
totally. Right.
and then not only did they tell you have to do that, they gave you points back to do it better. And I'm just like, what are you doing? They did that a little bit with KO. They just said like they incentivized you to take the better build already out the gates and gave you and gave you a refund on you. It reminds me of that like Monopoly Square where you like bank error in your favor is the chance card or whatever, and you're just like pocket the that was KO, and I'm just like, what? Right. So I think you just roll back a couple of their points changes. Maybe throttle them in different places. I don't know. Smarter men than me can figure that out. But KO, I don't even think you have to hit Vortex. Vortex feels like it's fine. Sure.
Well, what I mean by that with KO, I played a lot of KO last year and a little bit this year. But what I often find with KO is that generally one clear strategy is to castle against them, so that if and when they alpha you and they kill some things, they're then going to be dealing with the rest of the entire rest of your army, because you're all in one place, and as opposed to getting spread out and getting picked apart, blah blah blah. Well, that's a problem. If they've got a Warp Lightning Vortex, they're going to drop on your ass and hit your entire castle.
I see that. That's fair. Yeah.
So I was finding that in those games, against them is kind of. But yeah, I think I'm not sure who said it, but the idea of maybe just setting a cap. 50 points or less terms of the warp.
You can dispel the Vortex. It comes down, it's down for one turn, and then it's your game again. They can't get it back out on the table.
Like an 8.
Yeah, and like if you have a spellcaster worth its salt, it's got a +2 to a +3 right now.
I think you got to roll a 9. I think it's cast on.
So you have to roll an average roll on it with a caster worth its salt.
+1 to dispel is not that common, much less +2 or +3. Dispel.
In the Spelldom era, like I look at an army, and if it doesn't have a wizard with a +2 to cast, I think it's trash.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Sure, yeah. Cast and Unbind is one thing, but not Dispel. Dispel is still relatively rare.
They've
Like
rolled.
you look at Wrathy.
Oh, fair. I mean, I guess I live in a world where Nagash was +3 to all three, and I'm just like, peasants. All of you peasants. Or like the Willow quote, pigs! All of you pigs! Like, that's how I feel. Yeah.
So excited that they're going to do a Willow sequel. And hopefully that's not another example. Be careful what you wish for. But yeah, here's
Hey,
hoping.
T2 is the best Terminator. Willow 2 can be the best Willow. All right?
Let's do it. So on the drops. So we probably
you were talking about drops in MSU. This is a little bit of a reset. Thanks for Tyler. I know you've got a list there,
sorry.
and you're going. No. I want to thank you for being a good sport because you've been like task oriented. You've been driving this. I'm like, you just went down like this full rabbit hole of discussion, and I just want to like thank you for that. for humoring me. Yeah. So about the drops, go on.
Yeah, sometimes I have to remember I don't do a podcast anymore. I'm not a host. I need to
No, I'm letting you host this. That was my secret to success tonight. We're up to 17 live viewers, which is 3 times my peak from the last couple. So you're doing something right.
Yeah,
it's all
drops.
Tyler. It has nothing to do with me.
No, it's all Tyler, Mr. 1000, which is what I'm just gonna call you from now on.
No idea what that means.
Cubic Shenanigans, Brendan's podcast, is to 1,000 downloads an episode.
Oh, okay. No, that's 2+ stuff. That's not me.
Yeah, that one was Doug. Yes,
that's Doug.
There's a hard day where he said his favorite podcast, and then from there, like we saw this happen.
Yeah,
and we're like, huh. How about that?
Yeah. So you're Mr. 1000, and Dan is per download or per episode. I think is how I decided it.
Nice.
It's the gun show. That's right, Kicker. It's the gun show. So back to drops.
Yeah, Melnick, what do you think on drops? I've been talking a lot.
So I think drops is a trinary conversation.
It works.
You exist in 3 states. You are under 4, you are 4, or you are infinity drops.
Dude, okay, you've been hanging on my brain, or I've been hanging on yours, because that's exactly how I tend to think maybe 4 to 7 if I were to try to define that second tier, but absolutely,
sure.
Or maybe 5 to 7.
You're gonna.
I think once you start getting over 4, like you need to stop like worrying about packing it in and like how do I you shouldn't be asking yourself like how do I get to 8.
Right.
No. And that 4 number moves over time. There was a period of time where it was 5. There was a period of time when it was 3. It's been 4 for about 2 years now, which seems like
I tend to think it's
spot.
Like in my opinion, I mean, I don't know, we're splitting hairs here, but it's 0 to I would say it's 0 to 3, and then it's 4. Really, that is, I don't know. Maybe you could say it's 0 to 4, but
if I
there's a lot of 3 or less is the point.
If I
compared to
if I can piggyback off this, I think 1-drops just shouldn't exist as a rule. Like I just and if 1-drops do exist, it should be on combat armies. Like maybe like if Sylvaneth goes into like the full board control, like combat-y, like jack of all trades, magic range place where I wish they lived in.
Yeah, tickling me here. Yeah, keep going.
If they can be 1-drop or like 2-drop, right? But like for the most part, I think 1-drop should be a combat army only type thing. Like it should be just an utter third rail for a shooting army, or even a like super magic dominant army to be 1-drop. You just shouldn't have that. The option of the ranged army just shouldn't have that option.
It does seem pretty skewed right now. Like we can rattle off KO, Zinch, and Snipecast, Shootcast, the 1-drop Vanguard. Those are all 1-drop options.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the KO, the competitive KO, is more like maybe 2 or 3.
And I really thought that we had like we as a game had decided like 1-drops are no more. They went Sylvaneth lost their 1-drop, their like Mega Battalion 1-drop type options. Even like Orcs kind of like got like slapped on the hand a little bit, like for their one drop options. Like it felt like they were like, oh no, you just don't get to do this anymore. And then like Zinch and KO came out, and I'm like, I thought we had this discussion, Games Workshop, and I'm like, oh, it's on the shooting armies. Awesome. Like, it was just,
Right.
I think I understand the mentality of going, oh, shooting armies get to be one drop because double turns are more punishing for them, because combat happens in multiple phases of the game. The thing is combat still has to play fair because there is chaff and stuff, and shooting doesn't play fair with chaff. Like, and so for me that feels like you get to cheat at chaff by being shooty, and I get to cheat at the natural combat order by being one drop. Like,
yeah, and I mean, yeah, generally agree. There certainly are some exceptions. You know, one of the classic patterns in Warhammer, expressed well over the years by Tzeentch and Skaven, I would say, having the crap in the front and the business in the, you know, doing the real work in the back. You know, the skinks, the whores in the front, and then your real damage dealers in the back or teleporting around. Yes, we're getting the best of the both worlds, and that's usually a case of point issues. You know, like we have right now with Seraphon, they just get too much into 2K. That's the problem we had with Skaven when they came out. It was too much.
well, right, yeah, no, this is 100% valid. Like, Seraphon don't give up anything to do what they want to do, and that feels like, in general, like even peak Petrifex Elite gave up speed and tricks, right? Like, you play honest. There's no outflank. There's no teleport. Like, you're still playing an honest game. Like, so it's like you got to give up stuff. You got to give up stuff to get that other stuff. Like, it's just
absolutely.
Those are the levers we play with in our game. And Skaven, I think Skaven's in a super healthy place.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, now
like this is they're kind of a like this is kind of what they've got a lot of stuff that's been neglected in their books. So I don't want to say it's like they're living. They don't deserve any changes. They don't deserve any buffs. But if you're looking at what a toolbox sort of shooting powerhouse army that gets to do its thing looks like, Skaven's a pretty good blueprint.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're probably the best right now. Yeah, in the game. Yeah.
So in terms of one drops, I'm okay with them, but I feel like you gotta pay for it in a way. You know, not just the points that you pay for, but you have to have made compromise in getting to that end result. If it's, you know, taking, you know, the 300 points in battalion, fine, that's a start. But then you also had to take 300 points in units that
suck,
really didn't want. You end up on the other side of asking yourself the question: is it worth playing down that many points effectively in exchange for this kind of top end user?
Damn it, G-Dead. I realized that the OBR hoodie that I made should actually have that in quotation marks on the back. No tricks, just fists or something. Sorry, go on. I had to show as part of, the show within the show there. Got to talk to them. Yeah, paying for it in some way would be awesome. It's weird when there's an army that comes out with battalions have always felt like the Wheel of Fortune to me. Where they spin a wheel, and like when armies get good battalions or bad battalions, I just grab the book and I'm like, did this one get good battalions or not? Like, it just every time a tome comes out, and it's always weird to me. Like Beast of Chaos battalions, for instance, are absurd. They're a little pricey, but they're absurd. The whole model range in the thing. It's stuff like 0 to 3 Great Bray Shamans, 0 to 2 Doom Bulls. You might have to take one. Like Beast Lord or something, and then 1 to 3 of this battle line, 1 to 3 of this battle. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, the whole thing is just, whereas you look at like Death battalions, they're very specific. Like Death Watch is like you take one of this, a unit of this, a unit of this, a unit of this. Like that's the battalion. Like it's weird how these armies have this like sort of threshold, and the armies where it's like. Change host, for instance, it's like, oh yeah, everything you want is basically in the battalion already.
Yeah.
That's so weird to me. Like it has to be on some level a conscious decision to be like, oh yeah, we want to incentivize people to have everything they want in the battalion. But then on the flip side, then why the other battalions where they're like take a bunch of crap you don't want, and then like and then you get this for like a minute ability. Like I don't even read the battalion abilities anymore. I check how many points it costs and what all I can fit in it.
Yeah, still definitely more work to be done on that front. I think that's fair. Yeah, like they're making progress on the monsters front. I think they're going in the right direction in general with monsters. We've got some good signs. Archeon, Marathi are pretty amazing right now. Archeon feels worth his points. Marathi absolutely does. But yeah, definitely a little more progress on that front. So on
I think they've made significant progress on the front of battalions because, Tyler, you'll remember this. Back when Handbook 16 came out, it was really just you built your list and you're like, oh, darn it, I'm 100 points down. And someone would just go, what battalions are there that you already have units for? And you're like, oh, these two. And you're like, well, that's a total of 100 points for the two of them. I'll get my 3 artifacts.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll be a 2-drop. And everyone was like, yeah, that's fine. And we just, like, everyone just kind of went their own way.
Right, yeah.
So,
no, that's a great point. Yeah,
improvement.
Yeah, overall, definitely, yeah, in the right direction with some bumps along the way. But
I feel like you just dropped a puzzle piece in my lap that has solved the puzzle for me. It feels like battalions have been sort of a grandfathered approach, and then the new stuff or the revamped stuff they've taken agency with. And I think maybe that's what's been like kind of missing for me is like, oh yeah, we got to keep around this battalion because it's always been around, and like we'll tool it a little bit to show that we've changed it or we'll move the points, or we won't, who knows, but we've always had this battalion and it's always been there. And then like, wait, we need to make sure that this is represented, so we need to make a good battalion for it. And so I think that maybe that's why my wires feel so crossed like when I'm looking at battalions every book. And Sajil, just piggybacking off of the monsters thing, he's just saying, come on, Illyrial.
100%. God, yeah. Yeah, Marathi feels like a 1,000-point model after playing Illyrial for God knows how long that I was when she was terrible. Yeah.
Hey, so you play TTS? Can you for me do a tournament like called the Illyrial Challenge, like where like you do actually give Sylvaneth players a free Illyrial, and see how that affects the totality of the tournament?
Great idea. I love it. Or just have her come back to life. If you're a Sylvaneth player and you run Illyrial, she gets to come back to life.
Yeah.
After she dies.
Just do something like that and see if it like totally ruins the game for me.
100%. No, I love that. Yeah. That's a great idea, dude. No, there should be TTS tournaments like that. Yeah, where you make some minor tweaks, or you make some tweaks.
This is where TTS exists for me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. See, this what a great tool to like connect the globe to test and think about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a point. So on the drops, I mean, I don't have some overall hot take on drops to what degree are they worth it. I mean, I've got 2 specific thoughts, like based on my experience.
All right, one is you keep hosting, Brennan, your co-host. It's that time in the AOS RantCast drinking game where I walk away from the camera for a second.
All right, buddy.
A tradition unlike any other.
So yeah, man, that running Lumineth, I've been doing. Like you and I have talked a lot about. I like to, maybe you like this a little bit as well. I like to, like techless builds are a known quantity. I don't really need to test a lot with techless. Techless and an Arlon Legion in a 3-drop. I generally know what that does. It's strong.
Yeah, it's been beaten to death.
Right. So I've been testing a lot with high drop Lumineth list, 8, 9, 10 drop, where usually I don't have the option to dictate priority because I can learn more from that. And doing that for about 6 months, and then in the last few months trying out the more traditional Arlon Legion 2, 3 drop with or without techless. Definitely like having it's worth doing the battalion in terms of overall competitiveness with Lumineth. I think there's a stronger case to be made to do a low drop, more benefit with a low drop with Lumineth than the high drop. Part of that is because they're a late game army, in my experience. They're an army
Okay.
that, they castle early, they tend to get down in points, and you have to claw the game back, kill enough, get your opponent off the objective, play the full 4 or 5 rounds. So if you, are low drop and you can dictate the game from the outset, either, okay, I'm going to go first, I'm going to get on one or more objectives with my wardens, blah, 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 get my buffs up because I need to that game versus I don't have the option. So yeah, it's I mean, not saying anything new. To me, it's very case dependent on your build and the sort of the design of the faction that you're playing. And then another example would be running the snake heavy build. Snakes are obviously very. Oh, we lose you. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, we dropped off. All right, so this is the awkward moment where I'm talking to myself. It's always the
I'm
fun
back.
part.
Don't worry.
All right, I only got to talk to myself for a few seconds.
Yeah. Oh, the torture.
So no, I was gonna say that the other experience has been with running the snake heavy builds with Marathi. Obviously, snakes are a glass cannon army, so I think it's generally valuable trying to do low drop with that army because in some matchups, I really will want the option to dictate who's going to go first.
Right.
And
Well, because in that exchange you're looking for points exchange, right?
right,
Where in your LRL build you're not necessarily looking for in-game points exchange. You're looking for kind of this like overall net attrition rating.
right, right.
Where with the snakes you're like, I invested 280 points in these 10. They need to get 300 points for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I think, yeah, to me, it's just there are a lot of lists in the game that don't care whether how many drops they have, and as long as you're running them well, you really know what your list is doing. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But I do think there's still a number of builds that absolutely care, and it can make a big difference in terms of the competitiveness of those lists. Yeah, like I've tried a little bit. An example in my mind would be, well, yeah, just the idea of running an 8-drop snake list. I think I'm going to lose a lot more games doing that.
I'd agree. Yeah, that
Like,
doesn't sound like a good time for you. Just in
no,
general.
yeah, you're already inherently choosing to take the gas off the pedal by not running the more traditional Hagnar, which, yeah, maybe we talk a little bit of DOK tonight. Like, to me, if you're wanting to do a Marathi 5.0 DOK build, Tom also came up with the same list, and a playtester had mentioned it, that they were playing it a while back in playtesting. I'll put it that way. It's Marathi Khaine, Shadow Queen, either, I'll give you one version, Hag Queen on Cauldron as opposed to the Slaughter Queen, so that you can take Morgwaith, which for those extra now 50 points that you've got, 40 from 40 from the Hag Queen to the Slaughter Queen. And so Morgwaith for a little more survivability on your Hag on foot, Hag Queen on Cauldron. So there you've got the 2 Sippy Cups, 2 Battle Shock immunities, 2 wound rerolls. You've got Marathi Khaine, Shadow Queen. Okay, there's your 4 heroes. You've still got a brick of 30 Witches or Sisters of Slaughter. You've still got 2x10 screens of Witches or Sisters of Slaughter. And then you add in 10 Bloodstalkers, the 10 Snake Bows, double tapping from Marathi Khaine, which are incredible in my opinion. Like, those things have been all-stars in every game that I've ran them so far. And you've still got 100 points for 9 Shadow Stalkers for teleporting another screen.
Disgusting.
Yeah, like, that list has everything that you would want. You could change it if you want to do Slaughter Queen of Cauldron for a 4th hammer, 3 melee hammers, Slaughter Queen, Shadow Queen, and the brick of 30, and a 4th hammer in form of your range 10 stalkers. You could drop the, I think, you would drop the Morgwaith to Hag Queen on foot, a normal Hag. You're only getting 1 Sippy Cup, 1 wound reroll, 1 autoimmune to Battle Shock. So I'm not sure which way to go there, but yeah. Point being, like, yeah, that's in my opinion, if you're doing Marathi at least, I think you can do some very scary Dock lists right now as well without Marathi. But yeah, Dock is back. They're really strong right now.
They never went away. They fell from like S tier to A tier, I guess. Like
yeah, well,
How dare they?
yeah, for obvious reasons, because of as the shooting, the range meta became elevated. That was an army that you could turn off a little bit. You know, previously, not a lot of armies had the capacity to do 13 wounds on a slaughter on Cauldron, whereas now a lot more armies do, much less sniping out the 5 wound hags.
The other part of it is that like that army was kind of naturally throttled by availability. I mean, like you just didn't see a ton of it. It's an expensive army. The way that you bought your witch elves and stuff like that. We didn't see a ton of that army around. Same way Fire Slayers kind of has flown under the radar. Even when Petrifex Elite is sitting like Petrifex Elite, and I'm like, Fire Slayers is like that but worse. I'm like, literally, like, what if Petrifex Elite could teleport? Like, wouldn't you hate the army even more and have a run and charge availability like reliably?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you be even angrier? So like Daughters of Khaine, the internet was well aware that it was a powerful army, but it never got that like grass. It never like took hold in like the grass, you know, with the rest of the working folk, right? To like really truly hate Daughters of Khaine the way that it could have been hated. So it always kind of like hung around in that like A tier, never got over nerfed out of relevance because again, we admit here, and Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Midwest, I struggle to think of people who were just on the DOK train. I guess we gotta go ahead.
I think there was like maybe 2 people I could put like, you know, names to as to folks who were running it.
Yeah, Jake had a big year last year with him.
Yeah, Dan Bears had him, but like he wasn't doing any winning. Patrick Brindleson had him for a hot minute, but
yeah,
like by and large, it wasn't something that I had to worry about at like Midwest events.
Yeah, Chuck's not Midwest though. He's East Coast. He's New England. He's Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and Chuck is more of a Platonic AOS player.
Yeah, boom. There we go. Name dropped it. Yeah. No, and Jake. But that's the thing is like Jake. I mean, if Jake's going to beat you with DOK, he could have been beating you with whatever A tier, S tier army at the time.
Right.
So it's like you didn't have that like some guy with Petrifex Elite shows up to a tournament and like terrorizes the mid tables. That DOK was totally primed to do in that span where just like go ahead.
Yeah. No, I agree with your general point. Was Greg running them? I was thinking on the West Coast. Anyway, a good friend of mine, Chad, was Chad didn't make it to a lot of events, and he did really well. Chad Graham, he's not a content creator, so Chad, if you're listening, but you just don't rate, which I shouldn't either now because I'm not a content creator either. So that's neither here nor there.
Don't start this again. I'm going to quote the Jungle Book Vultures.
So, like, I think part of this, though, is, totally separate from a lot of the issues that we're discussing. Part of the reason that Daughters of Khaine didn't get, we'll call it the most wanted poster that some of these other armies got.
They never became the true boogeyman. Go ahead.
Not even that. It's because the propaganda machine hadn't been developed in this game in the way that it is currently. Where you have all of these, we'll call it popular community sources where people go for their information, and right, wrong, or indifferent, doom and gloom sells. And at the time when Daughters of Khaine was reigning supreme at like, a 65% win rate or something, something bananas. Like
unheard of for the time, even like just.
Right. Yeah. It was first of its kind. Those news sources did not exist that are most likely to get you the information of Petrifex is busted, Slaanesh is busted, Deepkin is busted, Seraphon is busted, and those outlets aren't what they are right now. If you took Daughters of Khaine off the table right now, they never existed, and then you and they were the 60% win rate, 65% win rate that they were when they came out, I'd bet you a large sum of cash that those places that tell you, nerf Petrifex Elite, get it off the table, put Slaanesh on your shelves, those people, those podcasts, those YouTube
Vince.
sites, like they weren't what they are right now.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think it's bigger than just like the news sources. I think it has to do with Age of Sigmar. The reactionary crowd, for the most part, I don't think that I don't want to say that they weren't really here, but like we had a doubling in player base with 2.0. We have something that like Frank the Chat King, I think he termed it AOS 2.0 babies or 2.0 babies. I mean, I think it's part of the 2.0 culture because I do feel a lot of them came in from either other games or like reignited the interest, and they weren't just like weathering the storm the whole time. The way that core Age of Sigmar crowd, like the bulk of the core Age of Sigmar crowd were. The majority percentage I would posit of people who were playing Age of Sigmar up to 2.0 were like, let's stick with it types, or like you got into it because like you used to play it and it just like me, like the stars finally aligned in my life to where like I can do a hobby game now, and then so I got in right under there right before 2.0. And I think that like with that sort of like people who hadn't been exposed to like the dark ages of Age of Sigmar to like really know what it was like to play without points, or like or I talk to folks like they forget about like the original Vanguard wing, and like, or they never played it. They've heard of it of rough to script, or original Clown Car KO. Right. Like even as relatively recent as that, like to truly feel
all the faithless.
What's that?
It's all the faithless.
Right.
If I'm saying that right. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So like I think that you got this influx of just like brand new players, and with that comes less security with the game because you're new to it, and a little bit more of a reactionary response. And so I don't want to place it all on like content creators, Even though I guess what I'm saying is I would like to shirk a lot of responsibility for anything I ever say, if that's okay, and blame you, the players, but not you, Chat Gang. You're cool. You're woke.
Yeah, it's different. Like you guys aren't those people. It's it's all right.
No, I do think that it has a bit to do with the flux of players. I mean, even the original DOK got in before 2.0. Like they got in right under that. LON was kind of the exception because it was the Nagash plus like 60 Grimghast Reapers became that boogeyman in that time period.
Right. Yeah.
Which I also blame the Midwest for, specifically Brendan and Detroit.
I was running 30 Grimghast Reapers. An appropriate and acceptable amount of Grimghast Reapers. And 40 skeletons and a bunch of chainmass. Separate.
Doc is Doc to me is a strange one. I don't know. I'm kind of of two minds about Doc. On the one hand, it's been interesting hearing some folks talk about Doc this year. It's always fun talking about just people in general and without actually naming names. That's always a good time.
Vague booking.
Vague booking.
Right.
Yeah, vague booking.
not having the balls to name names. Cool. But there's a fair amount of that's been going on this year that's been interesting, where I hear a lot of people talking about Doc as if we're still in 2018. No, we're not. Like, Doc has, in my opinion, they really did take they got knocked down with the shooting meta that came in, which is fine. But anyway, yeah.
Now they're back. Woo, that was fun.
They are definitely back. Maybe we can chat a little bit about Doc.
Yeah,
I think they're in a really interesting place, and then maybe LRL.
DOK for me, I actually like. They did get knocked down, right? And Slaanesh was like kind of a powerhouse combat army that was really taking it to DOK even when they were around, forcing DOK players who were like sticking with it to have to rethink their lists, which moved them away from what would have been the meta crushing list that like destroys everybody as business as usual style list to be able to compensate and fight Slaanesh. They had to like move 6-inch pylons. They had to shift their
Yeah,
list, right?
Anthony Lawrence's LVO list, in my opinion, was like a great expression of this. Yeah, where he was running, I think, 20 Blood Sisters. He had, I think, a break of 30 Sisters of Slaughter,
Hmm.
2x10 Witch Elves, and he had the however many Scourge Runner Chariots, like 4 to 6 Scourge Runner Chariots
Mhm.
for that range damage. That really helped.
Yeah,
Added some range to that list.
yeah, they had to make themselves worse against the field to beat this dominant sort of
Yeah.
counter combat army. And then you add in shooting, and so they kind of lost their foothold a little bit. I would agree, but it's not exactly. I suppose if you were like living it out in real time, it felt like you were out of it for a bit. But
Yeah.
for like the breadth of Age of Sigmar, it feels like they kind of really didn't like completely disappear. They didn't completely they didn't get completely KO'd, so to speak, the way like.
Totally. I always try to make this point to Chad, who I've probably spoken the most with over the years about KO. Chad's got this arguably one of the most gorgeous KO armies in the world, or certainly that I've seen. KO DOK armies in the world. It's amazing. But yeah, I always try to tell, like we've gone back and forth on this a little bit, that I always thought that DOK got off lightly. Sometimes he was in the mindset of, oh my god, we just got a nerf because our Hack Queen just went up 20 points or something, or whatever, when it was like 80 points and it went up to maybe 100 points or something like that. But yeah, no, you're right, dude. Like, they got a light touch in 2018 and 2019 period.
I don't think that's wrong is the subtext though that people might miss here. I don't think that's wrong. I actually like that they stayed as like a fulcrum. I think that addressing quote unquote problem armies should look a lot more like what they did to DOK than what they've done to other offenders.
Yeah. Well, especially because part of that was, of course, the meta that we were in.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't have a whole lot of range damage that could help take them down a peg.
Yeah. I would love to see like a more measured hand in taking some of these problem armies down a peg than completely just like flooring them for a couple major reasons. One, the meta is going to be shifting by the time most, like all things considered, the meta continues to churn. Like nothing stays the same. And the other side of this is like, if we're talking about Platonic AOS, the working man's AOS, you have 1 or 2 armies. The average AOS player isn't the big grinder. If DOK is their army, that's their army, right?
Right.
And why are we going to hurt them and say you can't play this game anymore because the meta, just the stars aligned in the meta to where that thing was the oppressive force at the time. And I try to maintain like 2 sort of guiding stars. Sometimes they're at odds, but for the most part, it's you should get to play with your toys, and we should all have fun, like in our various ways, whatever our fun is, right? Like, and so these sometimes they're at odds because sometimes like you playing with your toys means that like it's not fun for people, but for the most part, it's you paid hard-earned money and put in the time into an Age of Sigmar army. It's not like when you ban a card in Magic the Gathering and it's at most 4 cards in my whole deck, which could mean I have to retool the whole thing. But you ban a card in MTG, I just go on to Star City or eBay or whatever and just click, boom, and they're here in a couple weeks. Fixed, done. I'm playing. I'm up and playing again. I already proxied and am goldfishing because I heard about the ban ahead of time. Age of Sigmar, they keep the points pretty tight to their vest. We know we might hear some changes coming down the line. DOK, we swore was going to get a huge nerf come that winter FAQ. Everyone was just like rubbing their hands together. They thought the huge nerf was coming. Never happened. That first big winter FAQ, right? Like people were more upset that things didn't change that much than that they did, and to do that to a game that takes the amount of time it takes, not even the monetary aspect, but the sheer amount of time that our game takes, I just don't like telling people they can't play with their toys. Fundamentally.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like
DOK.
Yeah, so Daughters of Khaine, for me, they're like a fulcrum. They're just kind of like this, and that thing teeters on the top, and I really actually enjoy that. I think it's good to have armies like that. I also similarly think IDK as a gatekeeper army are pretty awesome. But we'll get to that a little bit later,
definitely.
maybe.
They're the one that, for my money, I would be most concerned about. depending on what happens with the points on the eels. I mean, it's fantastic that army now has more strong options. At the same time, I think they are scarier now than they have ever been with where they stand right now.
Oh, did you imagine hating Petrifex Elite, and now you have to deal with one up, or 2-up rerolling 1
Two up
saves?
rerolling,
Yeah,
ignoring rends.
unrendable.
Yeah, yeah,
Flying 16 can outflank.
yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. If we're not careful, I mean,
and you
it's nice having
can
those
only
against.
target the turtle, like, because it's
Right.
with ranged, because it's
Yeah.
the only thing you could target is the turtle, because it's uh, but their proof of concept is getting way better, and I love it. So it's like I'm divided because it feels so good to me, even though it could be so bad.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, they're, for my money, the one, that has the, I think, clearest potential for being out of bounds.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been strong since they came out, obviously.
they
I'd say generally inbound, but
yeah,
strong.
largely because they're largely inbounds because they sort of lived and died by the meta. I felt
Yeah. Mm.
like and that's where that gate is, that sort of gatekeeping army of like that litmus test where like if too much shooting crept in or too much of a certain type of skew build crept in, they just showed up and
Yeah.
embodied it, and that felt like actually kind of a good sort of throttle on the meta to
Mm.
have. But it's becoming to the point where they're not just there to like gatekeep certain skews. They are the skew, and they're
They
just
are the
starting to
skew.
punish everything. And that's
Yeah.
where it starts to go out of bounds, I think. But
Yeah. Melnick, you got any thoughts on IDK before we go back to Doc?
I really wish we could see not evil builds. Like, and that's what I think we got with Broken Realms and Wrath is people are going to be able to play not eels and not feel like an idiot as Meph like
Right.
today. But I don't think fundamentally like the deep lists are going to be any different. Which is annoying and frustrating because, like, yeah, I know what the eel list can do. I've seen the eel list for
since the book's been out,
almost 4 years now.
Yeah,
like, please,
right.
please, something else. Like, that's just, like, I don't necessarily have a problem that, like, eels are the list, but like, please, 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 let me see another option. Like,
Yeah.
just real quick.
Well, go ahead.
Zerg here dropping a tier 1 sub for 11 years. Thank you so much. That is, of course, Axo, the Blood Bowl murder dwarves in our league. So thank you so much for that sub, my friend. Sorry, continue. You want to see something else from IDK because they got such great sculpts, and we've only been seeing, quite frankly, my 2 least favorite in the whole range is the sharks and the eels. My favorite being the turtle, which is now in, so like let's go. But I love thralls and reavers. I think those are stunning models, and I want to see more of them.
I just want people to prove to me that they own those other models. Like, like prove that you own an Eidolon. Like, please do that.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be easy now. I think it's the Eidolon of the Storm is amazing.
Yeah, it's a good thing I own one.
Nice. Yeah. But yeah, so Doc, I've been playing a lot of Snake Heavy Doc on TTS, and Brent and I, while you were stepped away, Meph, TTS is really good for trying out unknown things as opposed to known quantities. I was telling them with Lumineth, like Techless is a known quantity, so I don't really need to do a lot of games with Techless. Kind of know what I'm getting on the 10 there. Same with Doc, you don't really need to do Hagnar with 30 Witch Elves, blah blah blah. So yeah, I've been trying out so this is from Jesse Gayhart. He turned me to, he's a painter, actually in Wisconsin. He told me about, we got a game in against Lumineth with his Snake Heavy list. It was a 3-drop Calibron. And so, yeah, he had Marathi, Shadow Queen, Bloodrack Medusa. Medusa had Shadowstone for the +1 to cast and reroll 1s to cast. And then Mind Razor on Medusa. And then Little Marathi had Seed of Shadows for 16-inch move and fly, Seed of Shadows spell, which is amazing on Little Marathi.
Is it self cast? It's self.
Yeah, yeah. She puts on herself. You can only put on herself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now that you get both Marathi Khaine and the Shadow Queen on the table, you have 2 pin pieces, 2 pin tag, distraction card effects, one of which can do a ton of damage in the Shadow Queen if you roll decently. So have those as the 3 heroes, 10 Blood Sisters, 5 Blood Sisters. Those are the melee snakes. 10 Blood Stalkers, 5 Blood Stalkers, the bow snakes, in a temple nest. Anytime the enemy hits you in combat and they roll a 1 to hit, they'll take a mortal wound at the end of their attacks. So nobody used to run Temple Nest because, of course, you had to take 2 units of bow snakes, and they were terrible until we got the Broken Realms. So yeah, 3 drop. He played me, and that list was amazing. Like, just experience that. It was pretty terrifying, actually, to be across from that. Even though it's the very definition of a glass cannon, it can go down easily. It's like 100 some wounds, 5 up save with a 6 up feel no pain, basically the entire army except for Marathi. But yeah, experiencing that, I was like, okay, there's something really here. So I've been playing variations of that list. The latest is basically that, but you drop one of the 10 Blood Sisters to 5, and then you add in 9 of the Shadow Stalkers, Shadow Stalkers, to give you at least 1 screen, and you're a 4 drop, and then also added in Ether Void Pendulum with Little Marathi. So if you're using Marathi Khaine aggressively as a pin piece, so it's like there's a few things you can do with this. Celebron, you could teleport, Little Marathi, and then she's got 3 spells. Okay, so you've teleported her more just outside of 9 of the enemy's line. Drop Black Horror. There's potential D6 mortal wounds on a unit. Drop Pendulum. Pendulum wholly within 6, and it moves 8 immediately. So that's a 14-inch threat. So after she's teleported, she can hit potentially a number of units with how Pendulum works. Maybe, certainly at least 1, if not more, for another D6 mortal wounds. She's got 3 spells. So with Pendulum, you could, like round 2, if it's on the board, start of the round, it gets tapped. Hopefully at least hitting 1 unit, if not more than 1, for D6 mortals. She dispels it. She's still got 2 spells left to cast. She recasts Pendulum, cast Black Horror. So, using her aggressively, you can do some real serious damage output with mortal wounds. She's not too bad in combat.
One of the things about the new Marathi that is awesome is it teaches you how to play these point centers better. Like one of the biggest mistakes I see with like Nagash players or stuff like that is not getting Nagash into the game. Or like if you have a 500 point model and you just like, this is why Catacross is weird, but for the most part, like a lot of the other like models, if you're dumping a quarter of your points into a model, you gotta be a presence on the table with that right. Model. And so you see a lot of people play conservative once they have like a 500 point piece, or even like like I saw Vlasdas with ethereal amulets where they're like, okay, I gotta wait, now I gotta go in with it, and I'm like, that's not how you use that. Like it might as well be dead for the first turn. If I had a spell that said don't do anything with that model turn 1, I would cast it every game.
Right.
Like, so you got to find a way. And so, like, I think the biggest power for the Marathi is that you're incentivized to go aggro with her as a 600-point model.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is the
That's good design. That's good design. It's teaching you to play the game well.
Yeah.
That's good design.
Absolutely. That Jesse turned me on to with the idea of Seed of Shadows on the little one is that I think most people think of, and you can certainly use her in this way, you keep Marathi Khaine in the backfield. She's got 36-inch range on Black Horror. You can maybe do a Bellwind to bump up her range and all of her spells. That's now a 42-inch range on Black Horror. But then you give her Mind Razor. Maybe, again, she's on a Bellwind, so 18-inch Mind Razor or a 24-inch with Bellwind. Keep her back, keep her in harm's way. But yeah, some of these games, you don't always want to do it because there could be games where if you're playing Little One aggressively, that then opens up more opportunity for her to take damage. Whereas if you were just playing the Shadow Queen aggressively and going into like Marauders and blowing up Marauders and then not taking any damage, you're going to last longer.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to pick your spots. But yeah, I've definitely been doing with the Shadow Queen what it says on the 10, using aggressively with 8 attacks now on Heart Render. Even if she's generally outside of the Durthu zone, Durthu 5 attacks, 3s, -2 6 damage. She's got 8 attacks.
I like that you have the Durthu zone like here.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. That's standard parlance. So yeah, even if, I mean, she doesn't like debuffs, so like she can definitely be turned off. Like a -1 hit is a big deal with her. But
you got to define the Durthu zone for some of us that don't know this in chat, gang.
Oh yeah, well, basically Durthu has it's models that have relatively low number of attacks that are on 3s and 3s. That's the Durthu zone. Yes.
This is what I used to call calling back to the cold open here. I used to call it the Dalton line in football, which is a quarterback that is exactly average. It's on the Dalton line.
Nice.
So like the Durthu zone. Oh my god, this is amazing. The Mendoza line. Yeah, right. Hotspur. Exactly. The Mendoza line, which is where I got Dalton line.
Is he still in the league?
Dalton? Andy Dalton's playing for the Cowboys or whatever right now.
Cowboys. He did the Bengals last weekend.
Oh my god! Wow.
Yeah. The Dalton line, the Mendoza line, or the Durthu zone. I love this. I finally have jargon that I can use where I don't have to explain the Dalton line to anybody.
Right.
Thank you so much for that. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. This is the first time I've heard it. Maybe I'm not watching enough podcasts, or is that a Scrubby and Wells original?
I don't know. It may have been. Yeah, who knows?
I'm very familiar with the Durthu zone. Durthu has betrayed me many a times.
Yes.
With roles of mediocrity.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, yeah, Durthu. Yeah, that's. But yeah, no. So yeah, amazing job on pointing Wrathy. Just the design of those two models now, it feels incredible.
Well,
how you can.
I hope that people learn the lesson, and she even breaks this rule a little bit. But I hope people learn the lesson that like a massive point sync single model unit isn't game breaking. You can be pretty aggressive with what you do with a War Scroll on a single model at like 600 points. I'm sorry, you can be. Archeon, like Marathi. Illyrial, get the memo.
Get the memo. Yeah. Catacross, another great example.
Yeah, I mean, he's pushed to the absolute like absurdity of what a 500 point like general. Right. Yeah, that's what you do. It's a single model. Right. Like it's a single model. Do that, please. And so I hope we've all learned the lesson, because, I mean, some lists don't have the tools to deal with a single model, and to me, it's not a problem with the single model; it's a problem with the list.
Right. But no, yeah. So yeah, it's just some thoughts on the snake heavy builds. Yeah, I've been running. I mean, Calibron is. If we get this new doc book that I think a lot of folks are still expecting, I don't know. It's kind of go back and forth. Like maybe our doc book was the Broken Realms. I just have a hard time thinking that's going to be the case, because crap is so scattered right now. You know, we literally have War Scrolls that are only available if you buy the Shadow and Pain box, or maybe the War Scrolls have been updated now.
They're on the app now. But yeah.
Are they on the app now? Okay, cool. But yeah, just things are pretty scattered. So I'm still hoping that we'll get a book. But yeah, if it's decent, I'm personally going to go all in on doc for a couple of years here. And yeah, to start with the snake builds. So LRL, I was going to do LRL, but LRL is, I mean, it's a very Remember Hammer oriented army. You know, you've got your deck of magic cards, and you're cycling through your 14 spells and trying to play the right card at the right time, and try to do the right sequencing. And then that's cool, but you know, I've played those armies for 5 years, so I'm a little worn out personally. It's also, there's not a lot of mobility, obviously, in LRL. Thank God. Otherwise, I think they would be broken if they had teleporting that you didn't have to really pay for, in terms of like Lochin, or the Ferryman, or the bridge. But snake heavy builds, they're really fun. Like the Calibron, the 10 snake bows, what you can do in terms of threat range, it's crazy.
So first off, unbelievable. Thank you so much for the follow there, Nick. You haven't been following me this whole time? All right, sorry. Well, like
he's an old man. He just figured out how to use the follow button. You gotta cut him.
Yeah, I gotta cut him some slack. I don't know, he says. I mean, you got us. You baked in the perfect segue into LRL. So I don't know
Yeah.
if we're done talking about
Yeah.
DOK, but LRL for me, one of the huge criticisms I hear is it feels incomplete. And I heard you say earlier on, it it's like a great, just like one of the best books they've written. I lean towards I actually really like the book. I think it's a really well written book. Let me put it this way: of the armies I don't own that I own physical books for, battle tomes for, LRL is the only one. I tend to go digital for the armies I don't own, and I buy the physical books for the armies I do own, and then I also buy the PDFs anyway, because Games Workshop won't give them to me for free. But
me neither, buddy. It's okay. It's not a you thing.
Grumble. No. I like the book a lot. I hear the book feels incomplete or the army feels incomplete.
It does feel incomplete. Yeah. There's
so both of these can be true.
Yeah, totally. It's an and both situation. Absolutely. Yeah.
Care to elaborate some?
Yeah, well, so
nah.
Well, before I start to ramble, Brendan, what are your thoughts at a high level on Lumineth?
So, I mean, I have the book. I haven't played against them though, so that always ends up being the metric for me where I gain a lot of insight.
Well, you internalize it, really, is once you get it on the table. Yeah.
Either I play it or I see it across the table, right? I have to have kind of that physical interaction because it's the engineer in me where theory meets practice is my job. So that's the time where I learn the most. Is when you have this item on the piece of paper and you see the machine in front of you and you're like, you've forgotten the power source. And like, it's not moving for a reason. Anyway, so I really don't have any kind of new insights because, like, I've watched battle reports and things like that, but for me, there's a different level of when I am standing at the table and I'm seeing the thing do the thing. Right. So, like, in terms of, what I see in the book, like, I understand the incomplete statements. It's definitely a book that feels like maybe like 2 to 3 units more would have been appropriate. But, just on what we know about the lore, like, it's pretty clear that those are going to show up sooner than later.
Right. It seems like we're going to get an expansion on this Teklian nation starting point maybe as soon as next year, and then at some point down the road we'll get the Tyrionic nations.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if there's ever been a book that's been more clear that, like, at launch you're like, oh, that, like, there is more of this range, like,
right.
Like it's one of those things where, with Stormcast we know that there's going to be more chambers and things like that. This one was just like, oh yeah, we know there are other models, like other units that live in this, like, in this sphere, and we're just not being told about it right now.
I really hope they go the chambers open style route and it all plays together. The other way would be like with their sort of 3 core battle line, and I know that the Hammer Bros can be like the 4th.
Sure.
But if those 3 are like communicable across, if they do split the battle tones, and then those 3 can be in Tyrion's art, because that's like the core elf dude or
they're adjudicators, they're liberators.
Yeah, and then those have different play and the other stuff. I think that you got to go one of those 2 ways for me. I think when I saw the model range initially, I was the most disappointed with the core 3, which is like the total opposite of the community reaction. Like, everyone was like, "Oh, we love the Wardens and the Sentinels and the Dawn Riders. They're the best." And I'm like, these look too much like normal ass elves. Oh, the dudes with the cow helmets using hammers, yeah, and the weird Final Fantasy crystal that's become mobile and sentient bull fighting you. Those are awesome. Like, I was like the total opposite. I'm like, those are just normal elves. Gross.
Yeah.
I want the weird elves. So I hope that they have. I'm really hoping. I think in an ideal situation that completeness comes with the opening another chamber, and they all play together. I think that would be really swell.
Yeah,
it also
absolutely.
would dilute the fear of too many elf armies. If it's still just one, that's just the Tyrion and Teclis, power.
Right.
We have a local who has for years suspected that there's going to be a Grand Alliance elf, at some point down the road here.
Yeah, on the so we of course have the what is it called, Blade Lord or Blade Master,
Yep.
that model from the female Sword Master model from the Warband. So we have that. I mean, that looks like that's going to be a unit of 5. And then
Yeah.
there's a number of rumors that I've been hearing for a while now about a bolt thrower that's coming. And then of course the obvious is that we don't have the elf hero on pony that we would perfectly pair up with the Dawn Riders. That's probably the most obvious hole in that book right now, is the lack of a mounted hero. So I mean, right there you've got a little release that you can do: bolt thrower, elf calf hero, and a unit of 5 of those female swordmasters. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then whatever else we might get. But yeah, dude, I mean, I've got all kinds of thoughts in terms of like competitive play, list building, play style, how the game's actually experienced. I don't know where you want to go with LRL, but yeah, we'd love to chat a little bit with them because certainly got a lot of experience this year.
Well, LRL has for a little bit was being painted as like I felt prematurely as a boogeyman, and we saw Teclis's War Scroll and the
Right.
masses cried. I will put in the bubble the one spell that I just think should be unmade. This is my Vince Venturella moment.
Yeah.
Doubling the cost of command points in a non-targeted, just like you cast the spell and then that happened. No.
Pretty painful. Yeah.
No, just jettison that from the game, please. But beyond that, like I don't see anything totally out of bounds from the army. What is your experience? Is this a boogeyman army? Is it, if we had like some sort of weird like tiering system where S is like special, and then there's like an A which is like great, but not like broken or overpowered or out of bounds, and then you got like B and C and down from there.
I like that idea. Yeah, you should copyright that. That's a great concept.
Where do you think they fall? And what's the reality of this army? Yeah, go ahead.
100% right in the middle of tier A, in my opinion. Like, yeah, they're very competitive. They have rough matchups. I haven't tried out the 1-drop 80 Sentinels, 40 Wardens, 1 Cathalar, or the 2-drop version. Like, no interest. That that can certainly lose games, but I mean, I'm not a fan of builds like that being viable. Certainly as a 1-drop, like that's not healthy. That's the one obvious problem with the book, I would say, is that you really should not be incentivized to run a 1-drop with that many Sentinels. But at the same time, that build is not a reason to increase the point cost of Sentinels, because if you're just taking, say, 40 or less, they feel perfectly fine for 140 points. Like they're that's a lot of points to be paying.
Yeah, and if you get it, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, if you take 2 by 10 of that's 280 points for just some chip damage, especially, or very little if you're not getting your spell off with the Power of Hish, they don't feel like they're worth 140 points a lot of the time. Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh no, not to mention like even with that, like if you skew too hard in them and you get into them, they're paper. They just explode.
Everything.
You're giving up a lot of board control because you're already paying the premium for elf models, which is just that's just part of the game.
You look at them and Wardens. I mean, Wardens, they have 2 attacks versus. I mean, they basically all else equal do a similar. They have a similar damage profile, let's say, whereas Wardens are 2 attacks and the bows are 1 attack, for good reason, obviously. But point being that I realized after the fact, a number of months into playing LRL, in my opinion, there are a number of games where, let's say you're running, let's take what's become really a list that writes itself, or variations of the list that writes itself, the Teclis Arlon Legion build, where you have Teclis and a Cathalar, and then you have some number of Wardens and Sentinels. Let's say it's 3 by 10, 3 by 10 of each. And then you've got 5 ponies, and then maybe like Twin Stones, Geminids, and Spellport, of course. So, and then the battalion. So that's a 3-drop list, very competitive. In a lot of games, I think it may make sense to actually put your Sentinels on the front line and put your Wardens behind them in terms of the actual impact on the game. In a lot of games, in playtesting, I would rather lose the Sentinels. Like, let's say I'm going up against War Clans, and they're going to be coming in, or BCR, an army that's coming into me. I would rather lose those Sentinels than lose the Wardens, because the Wardens are going to be doing more damage output in those. Anyway, so it's things like that kind of been a little, like, I don't hear a lot of people talking about the idea of using their Sentinels as a frontline screen for their Wardens. Most people will just throw their Sentinels in the backfield. But a lot of games, I would much rather lose those Sentinels than the Wardens.
We call that the Game of Thrones defense.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was one little thing that stood out in terms of testing. That's a little counterintuitive.
Yeah.
With how they play.
Interesting.
But yeah, but no, they're absolutely an A-tier army. They're strong. They have some rough matchups, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so for me, the army's kind of polarized into essentially like two builds. It's
Right.
techless, everything else. Now, like you said, there's the 80 Sentinels thing, and
Yeah.
that's going to be what it is. But for me, it's like techless and then everything else. Where do you fall on which, the meta's kind of skewing towards? Which do you think is better? Is techless the oppressive juggernaut that people previewed on the War Scroll, when the War Scroll came out? I know there's one exact problem I hope the Winter FAQ fixes with endless spells, provided that happens.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Marty's really been on this. Martin Orlando has been talking a lot about this, and yeah, has been submitting it to the team. Yeah, so hopefully that will get cleaned up. There are a couple of things like that need to get cleaned up, but I didn't think there's maybe at a high level you're right. Absolutely, those are basically the two categories. But within those two categories, you certainly have subcategories. Like within the everything else, obviously, you have Emetrica builds, you have the Arlon Legion without techless builds. Speaking of Marty, the list that I ended up with was a variation of Marty's, which I think you may have had on your show.
He's been on a couple times he was part of the hypeisode. I have a particular series. I have the hypeisodes where we
Nice.
just it's shameless propaganda. I am not trying to toe the line and be objective. We are just going to talk about why an army is awesome, and that's it. We did it for Sons of Behemoth. It's just when I find the right person who's just like hyped about an army, and they've got a take, I'm like, come on, we're just gonna talk about why this army is awesome. The way that I feel about Ossiarch Bone Reapers, when I find my sort of mirror for a different army, I'm like, come on, come on the show. So
ooh, Stalkers, nice.
At the center of Age of Sigmar, there's a phrase, one of maybe Haywo's catchphrases is because AOS is sweet, or whatever, is he'll say, and it's just ingrained in my head that just sometimes we just got to stop talking the numbers and the metrics and just appreciate how sweet what the zoomed out view of is going on is. Maybe that's platonic. Maybe that's what I'm. Maybe that's platonic. AOS is just AOS is sweet. That's the definition of it. When AOS is sweet. Go ahead, Brendan.
There's something to be said about being able to have a 4-hour stream where all he did was talk about Sigvald and make his Sigvald WoW character. I don't know. There's something about that to me that is strictly in this game.
Yes.
Yep.
100%. It's perfectly weird for this, and I don't know. Go ahead and show me the other gaming fandoms that also do like to crunch the numbers, that also do like to play competitively, and then you have one of those guys who sits back and he goes, "That model was dope. And I'm gonna spend the next show dedicated to just appreciating this model."
Just 4 hours of loving this model, even though he's the number crunchy, 100%. 100%.
So
yeah.
So within the everything else, you've got the Emetrica builds, and obviously, it is fascinating, in my opinion, the range of builds that you can get out of that book, which again is another sign, in my opinion, of how well balanced that book is. But I was talking about Marty's list. Marty, I think he and I are of a similar mindset where we see the power of techless, but we're more attracted to the idea, I think I can speak for him in this case, of trying to get as much mileage as you can without techless. And so, that build, like my variation on his list was kind of where I ended up before switching over to doc testing. What was it? Let's see. Cathalar, Stone Mage, Avalanor, the named cow. Let's see. 20 Wardens, 20 Wardens, 10 Wardens, 10 Sentinels, 10 Sentinels, 10 Sentinels, 5 Ponies, Orlon Legion, Twin Stones, and Spell Portal. List has a lot in it. 2 big bricks of Wardens. 20 Wardens are incredible in terms of their damage output. I mean, they're the Mortek Guard 100% of that book, which is pretty clear, when you look at it, like these are the Mortek Guard of the book. Yeah, absolutely. They're the backbone.
Backbone,
and
because
then
they're made of
backbone. You still got you still got another unit of 10 Wardens. You've still got 30 Sentinels, 3x10. I mean, yeah, actually, the mirror match, specifically against Teclis, would probably obliterate this army because of Searing Light through Spell Portal. You've got a lot of units that.
Yeah, the Technado, yeah.
The Technado is going to rampage through that army. But yeah, in general, you've got a little bit of mobility. A lot of people are doing the 5 ponies in the list because you need some mobility, I think, with this, not just relying on the speed of Hish or relying on like Teclis if you've got him for his whatever his move is, 14 inches, I think, at full health, or first bracket. And yeah, and then you got Avalanor, who likes to shit the bed, 100% Durthu zone.
Durthu zone.
But again, he stacks with the debuffing in terms of to hit. So Marty's been doing the Geminids as well, potential for triple, -3 Shining Company, Avalanor's protection, Avanor's Guardian of Fish, I think it's called, and then Shining Company with the potential -3 to hit. But yeah, you can get very easily get your army at -2 to hit when you're running the Arlon Legion and Avalanor. So it kind of plays as an early castle, and then you break out of that. A lot of game. Anyway, maybe I'll stop there with that list. Well, one last thing on that list. So Spell Portal is enormous with Lumineth. It's not just about the Technado. Like with that, that's a 4-drop list, by the way, with all those tools. 30 Sentinels, 50 Wardens, Avalanor, 2 heroes, and then still 5 ponies with the Twin Stones for the amazing. Oh, it's in Sidetrack as well. Really strong on magic, 10 spells, up to 11 spells with Ether Quartz. Spell Portal is amazing for this army. What you got going on there?
It's Xanthos.
Nice.
Coming on in.
I thought you already painted him. Oh no, Cavalis is the Leech Cavalis is what you've got painted already.
Yeah.
Is he any good, by the way?
He's good in catapult lists, which is why he waited so long to be in my army. Nice. Because catapults don't work for me.
I've heard that a few times. Yeah.
I have tried.
Yeah. But no, yeah, Spell Portal, incredible. So there are so many spells in that army that you can really turn on with Spell Portal. Like in Tome, where you can pick out a model and just slay it if you roll over its wound characteristic. I mean, the ability to do that from a 37-inch start range.
Oh yeah,
within Tome.
I mean, even the threat of like when you're doing the list thing, where you're the turn 0 and you're swapping lists, and you tell your Stormcast opponent that you can break his cohesion, and now they have to change their deployment.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the power of something like that.
From a 37-inch start range with Spell Portal. Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. So there are numbers. Darkness of the Soul through Spell Portal.
Grimslacker here in chat. Spell Portal for Lambent Light all day long.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. It starts with Technado and Lambent Light, but yeah, definitely folks need to explore the other spells and what you can do in terms of your toolbox with that army. Darkness of the Soul combined with Voice of the Mountain, of course. You put that through Spell Portal. That now again has a 37-inch threat range to potentially just shut to Be'lakor a unit. That's amazing against Sons of Behemat because now they're on bravery of 5. 7 to 5, 7 down to 5, potentially down to 4 with the Cathalar trick getting put onto them. Anyway, so just a number of amazing spells that you can do to really have a huge toolbox with that list.
Just messaging Brendan here real quick.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. It's probably getting
we lost him. I mean, it's approaching. Wait.
Yeah, I sorry, I had to walk away to like fill up my water cup and stuff. I'll be right back.
I mean, I worried it was 9 o'clock. I'm like bedtime, man.
I mean, we're approaching that. We're approaching the bedtime line, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, all right. So LRL firmly A. It feels like an army. Go ahead.
With real challenge, like
It feels like it's got some hard counters, like some
um
maybe not hard counters because when you have a magic toolbox, you tend to have outs, right?
yeah.
But
I mean, KO is the one that everybody thinks of, but when you actually, I mean, I haven't played much Techless, to be honest, because there's not a lot to. I feel like I generally understand through others what you can do. Techless is strong. Period. If I want to try to go 5-0, absolutely, I can bring a Techless 3-drop list or 2-drop list and have a good shot at doing that. Certainly 4-1. But yeah, so KO. So think about it. Like, I think a lot of us think KO is the hard counter. I'm not sure if it could be characterized as a hard counter. Generally, isn't KO? So what is the drop count for KO right now for the competitive? Is it like
I
2 or
think
3 drops?
3. Oh, 2?
2?
They're on two. Okay.
Okay, so it's 2. So yeah, you're often not. I think a lot of lists are going to be running a unit of ponies, and that's going to put you at 3 drops with the RL Legion. If you don't do that, then yeah, you can get down to 2 drop with Techless. So the point, yeah, in terms of this, the potential double turn and dictating the game early on, but Psyr double tapping. I mean, you have to run. And that's another reason I was talking with when you stepped away. Why you have to, if you're going to, especially if you're going to do Techless, you have to run Arlon Legion if you're trying to be any semblance of competitive. Because number one, you need that, or you have to at least buy a command point. You need a command point to turn on Psyr. If KO goes first against you, alphas you, you got to get Techless to 2 up. So let's say you do that, and yeah, and they pour a lot of their army. You're castled up. They alpha. They drop their army. Let's say they're taking like even 9 engine riggers that they can then get into you in combat. But then they're just going to be hitting. In my opinion, they should be hitting sentinels, not wardens. A lot of people would have wardens on the front line, but they hit your sentinels, they kill them, but they're not getting into Techless. Then I think Techless could still potentially survive against a KO alpha. With a 4-up save. You can't reroll ones with another CP. That's one change I think the game needs to make is the generic command ability. Just make it saves. Don't limit it to combat. And make it available in the shooting phase.
Since they've upped the shooting.
Right? It's not right now.
Yeah, it is.
Can you reroll ones to save against shooting with a generic command ability?
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay, I didn't think you could.
Look up the rules here, and real quick, Grim Slacker says for SCE, he says SCE is a super hard matchup.
Yeah, the 1-drop shoot cast, which whenever the fact drops should be gone from the game. No, 100, like yeah, get rid of that nonsense.
I love it because you've been playing a Stormcast for a while too, and you're.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
like,
stupid.
Yeah, get rid of this.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, whomever that was, they're 100% right. That is, generally speaking, the hardest counter that's out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Grim Slacker. This is usually just refer to him as Grim. One of my Mortarks, one of my merry Mortarks. He's been like hard on the LRL train for basically since they were previewed and playing a bunch of his games and stuff like that.
Nice.
He says Gab Bomb hurts too. 2x10 evocators.
Yeah. I mean, that can do some work. Yeah, to me, that's something you can play around with.
You screen. I feel like you can screen against evocators personally. Like,
yeah.
I remember everyone was like upset with like Gav Bomb right around that time. I mean, for my opinion, will forever skew against whatever the sort of populist most vocal thing is going on in the community.
Right.
Because I remember a time everyone was like Gav Bomb is the most powerful thing ever, and I was just like. No.
Guys, there's things called screens.
Yeah, like they dropped and like I'm like, and then you do that, and now I'm on the other side of the map.
And now they have a 4-up save, or maybe a 3-up, like maybe a 3-up save, but probably just a 4-up save. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I've always been pretty underwhelmed by evocators, at least relative to the hype. Yeah.
Yeah, relative to the hype, important distinguisher. They're certainly cool. I
Yeah,
miss
they're fun. Yeah.
I miss old Star Soul Maces. Really is.
Yeah.
Just roll a
Yeah.
D3. I remember. Wait, I just roll a D3 and then they take wounds and they can't save
Right.
against it. I just remember that moment of like bring it back.
Yeah.
You're more likely to see shoot cast anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think more in terms of other hard counters. But point being, on KO, I'm not necessarily convinced that sufficiently qualifies as a hard counter. It's a hard matchup.
Right,
Absolutely.
but hard counter usually denotes that like you have no chance if you encounter
Right.
this thing, provided they play the optimal strategy and roll average. You have
Right.
no chance, right? Like,
Right. Yeah, I have a hard time seeing how that's the case in terms of if you kill tech list, you have the rest of your army, or a lot of the rest of your army, and they're going to be right in front of you.
I said before I thought it was a mistake to drop KO points, but I don't think the army is like totally out of bounds. And if there's an army that's allowed to be the oppressive drop and pop shooting army, it should be them. That should be their shtick. If there's they're the 40k army in AOS, cool. Then they get to be the only one that does that. Like that's their shtick. That's their thing. The space capitalist dwarves get to do that. And it's awesome and perfectly AOS-y to have an army like that. And so, like, continue to allow that to be their niche. But I have never felt, utterly oppressed by KO in any of my matchups because sometimes they roll bad.
Yeah,
they drop and they shoot. And of all the armies that do that, they always feel the most exposed because they're still kind of relatively low model count compared to, like, something like Tzeentch that has horrors, that has, they're still relatively low model count. They're usually concentrated in one area of the board. If you're spread out, go ahead.
Yes, as long as you don't spread yourself out too much.
Yeah, exactly.
All else equal is what they want you to do.
Right. And so I tend to try to castle anyway and play. I've traditionally played Death Star style armies as a rule, so I've never personally felt like super, sometimes there's games where they show up and they're like, okay. Old Cloud car. They show up like, yeah, they do actually shoot Nagash off the table, top of turn 1, and I go, let's get a charge off.
Right.
All right, good game. Let's re-rack. Let's go again. Like, I've never been upset about that personally.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
like I'm okay with taking a hard L, and some people aren't, and I think that's probably my MTG player talking, where like I'm just used to, or even like jungling in League of Legends, where I'm like, this jungler has the edge on me. I know they do, and so I have to compensate by doing X, Y, Z. And when you have that, for me, I like known commodities like that. And so for KO to just that be their shtick, and I don't feel too bad. And I do think that there's a throttle mechanism in the game because shooting only happens once per turn. As opposed to they get to shoot. We both get to shoot both phases, both turns, player turns.
Yeah, so I don't see the shootcast one drop absolutely, but hopefully that will get removed. I mean, LRL, it's one of those armies that, at least in my opinion, if players don't really understand it, if they haven't really gotten experienced with how it plays, and get that, like, it's easy to lose games with LRL is what I'm trying to say. It's actually relatively easy to lose games with that army if you don't really know your know your stuff, know what you're doing.
It's a high skill floor, but elves should be.
Yeah,
I know it may be a bad take, but I think that you just like you want a good sort of bell curve of like good and performances of armies. I think you want that same exact curve for like the skill floors and ceilings of armies. Like, an army that's easy to pick up should probably have a lower ceiling than an army that's difficult to pick up. Right? Like that feels natural to me. That I don't know what that says about like the game of Age of Sigmar, but that feels natural to me. And I like that if an army is going to match its lore and its narrative with its table play, having elves be an army that's like kind of difficult to pick up, that feels right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Not to reset it too much, but how does DOK feel on that axiom?
The snake heavy. So We're name dropping our buddy Vince a lot tonight, so just
Hi,
to make
Vince.
have an awareness of that. Yeah, he's always given me shit about like, dude, you're an Iron Jaws player, you just don't know it. Like you need to be running because Iron Jaws is was certainly at its most challenging. The very definition of a working man's army of that, trying to get as much mileage out of it as you can. And it's a quote unquote technical army in the sense of you have to play it well. You have
Setting
to have
up
good positioning, setup is exactly. And
setting up
Vince
the
did well
smashing
with
and bashing is
Yeah.
something that I think orc players, maybe not orc players themselves, but people that look at the orc army take for
Yeah.
granted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, so that Iron Jaws, there are a number of armies that are much less remember hammer oriented, and instead, at least certainly in playing DOK and playing these snakes, it's been the best experience that I've had of AOS in a long time because I'm not trying to cycle through 14 spells,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not trying to think about the sequencing of tapping twin stones. And you go down the list. There's a lot of those variables with Lumineth. There were quite a few of those variables with Sylvaneth, a little bit with Stormcast, but not as much. So yeah, it's like drinking a fine, smooth wine playing DOK comparatively. It does what it does. Everything has a role. Marathi, Khaine, Shadow Queen, pin, tagging, damage output from the Shadow Queen, Shadow Stalker's incredible power projection, glass cannon with really good damage output. If you play intelligently, in my experience so far with this, you look at it on paper, you're like, how in the hell is a 5-up save, 6-up feel no pain army? How would that have any shot of going 4-1? Which is generally, personally, what I'm interested in. But it feels like a quintessential example of an army that can do that with relatively decent matchups.
The skill, having a good skill curve and understanding where you're. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like anyway, yeah. So it feel and the big thing is the mobility. Like LRL appropriately is pretty constrained mobility wise. Again, unless you're really running a lot of Dawn Riders, which I don't think you're going to see that many people doing really well consistently with 30 Dawn Riders.
Yeah,
on the
their
table.
damage output is awesome against the specific thing their role
Right.
is to beat, but if you're not fighting those, you basically infantry. Like they don't
Yeah.
have they're not a hammer anymore. They don't.
They have other roles.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not a hammer. Absolutely, you can still screen, zone, and objective grab with them. But yeah,
Yeah.
most of my games when I was running them, that's what they were doing. They were not being. I wasn't facing armies, but for whatever reason, majority of armies that I faced this year with Dawn Riders, it wasn't a lot of one-win models.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
See,
But
I
yeah,
feel like you'd use Dawn Riders a lot like I used to use my Black Knights, which is like set the point of attack someplace, or like the beauty of Black Knights is like you set the point of attack here while my slow skeletons move into combat, and then they're dead, and then I have them run over here and get this point. So like they got to play two roles in the same game, which was their superpower for me.
Yeah.
Dawn
Right.
Riders feel like a little bit more like Black Knights, where you're kind of committing to doing one of those two, or even you can yeah. So or
Yeah,
you can, go ahead.
I've tried out some games where you do Ethereal Blessing on them, you do Mystic Shield. And by the way, Brendan, did you check and see if I was wrong on the real
My
ones?
general's handbook isn't near me, so I'm just gonna assume I was right.
Okay, Defconcio. Just because of that.
All right, well, you look this up. I'm going to use the restroom. Brendan, what are you painting, and why is it awesome?
I'm playing Stalkers, and that's why they're awesome. I just finished my Xantos, and the pictures will be going up on Twitter when we're done.
Nice. Introducing match play. Actually, is it even going to be in here? It's probably going to be in the.
It should be in General's Handbook 20 and 19.
Okay, here we go. Let's see.
It's just not going to be in the.
So we've got all out attack, all out defense, and volley fire. So those were the three new ones.
Yep.
So all out attack is
combat
at the
phase.
start of the combat phase. Volley fire is shooting phase. All out defense, you can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase.
Or
if you do so, nope.
No,
If you use
no, or
command ability.
okay.
If you do so, pick one friendly unit wholly within 12 of a friendly hero, within 18 of friendly hero that is your general. Reroll saves a 1 for attacks that target that unit until the end of that phase. Yeah, it's combat phase only.
All right. Well, Tyler was right.
Put the check in the mail. Or give me 5 extra points on my Adepticon score next year, or 20 whenever the next Adepticon is.
I'll give it to you in 2021. That's fine. I think I can make that happen. At
Isn't
the
that weird,
core,
though?
like, that's the thing that I'm gonna really struggle with as the Adepticon TO is
How much trouble we can. You might want to shut up here. How much trouble can we get into as we're joking?
Oh, I'm sure tons. But like I have to alter my mindset. I'm running Bruce City Brawl, like it's running the 3-ring circus. It's
Right.
I know just about everybody personally at that event, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird to think of sometimes.
Yeah.
Like in the Bruce City pack, one of the secondaries last year was attempt to bribe a judge. Like
Nice.
you
Yeah.
don't have to achieve it, you just got to attempt.
Right.
Totally optional. Other
Domus
item, right?
is a fun guy, but I'm not sure he would go for that.
No, right. But Adepticon has to be vanilla hand. It is running an event that is just out of the book.
No.
Normal missions, normal like scoring system.
Yeah.
There's no shenanigans that I can get into, right? Like, it's because the larger the event, the more broad it's got to be. When I've got the 50 people at Bruce City Brawl who have signed up for the circus, man, that's on them as much as it is on me.
Right.
When I've got 200 people plus at Adepticon, that's got to be a very like expected, catered, curated experience, and like that is just two different mindsets, and I know I have to adjust to that. Like
What's interesting here is you described Bruce City as like the attempt toward the Platonic AOS, and Adepticon as the sort of curated what's expected from the book wasn't like what's described as the Platonic AOS, and I feel that there's like I don't think that this is like a contradiction. I think that this is a really good thought to explore with our core sort of episode here. That Bruce City feels more Platonic working man's AOS, and Adepticon has to be more. I hate using the word vanilla, but like almost
that's what it is.
Like it's got to be like more vanilla. It's got to be more by the book, and by the book isn't necessarily so. Like they actually give you Go ahead.
I don't think it's necessarily worse either. It's different. I mean, more this whole Platonic thing to me, which maybe I should have said this at the start of the show. I remember that conversation we had, Meph. It was one of I would joke with Brendan a week ago whenever we talked. It's like, oh God, I sort of threw myself into the deep end here by saying something that sounded like I had a coherent worldview behind it when I didn't. So, but it was more of an interest in exploring this topic because I don't really have a lot of clarity.
Every RantCast ever. This is how I live my life,
right.
man. No,
absolutely.
No.
So yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
So I like that you clarified there. Again, this has been a thought experiment the whole time, and not telling anyone that there's a right or wrong way to play Age of Sigmar. That's it.
Right.
This is a thought experiment. You think about this,
right.
dear viewer, dear chat gang. The GHB did something really awesome. I think it was the GHB where they actually put their little their tournament scoring list in it now, which for me is maybe it was the. Yeah, it was in the GHB, where they put their little scoring sheet for it to be like, hey, this is how you score an Age of Sigmar tournament, and they actually did that for once, which has previously been I've heard talk of Games Workshop needs to have there needs to be a Games Workshop official tournament pack / TM, and I mean I don't agree with that personally, because I think that the flavor of every tournament being a little bit different, and each TO.
Right.
I went over this. I even mentioned this with Greg when we were doing the competitive discussion episode of AOS.
I don't know if that would even if we did have that. I'm not sure
It
that
wouldn't
would
take
have a meaningful impact. Well, I was gonna say I don't know if it would have a meaningful impact on changing the reality, which NashCon is going to do its thing, Brucey is going to do its thing, etc.
Yeah. Nova's going to do its thing. LVO is
Yeah.
going to do its thing. They're still going to kind of live in their own sphere, and I think that's part of the beauty of the game. If I don't like your tournament pack, I probably won't go to it unless my friends are going, and then I will go, because for me, Age of Sigmar is like a community first type game. Like
Right.
I mean, I'd play if I had no friends that played Age of Sigmar. I'd still play Age of Sigmar because I do love the game, but I would still be going to tournaments to see people I haven't seen in a long time, and that social gaming aspect.
Right.
It'd just be a little bit harder to do. So when Games Workshop put in like their tournament scoring and their not ideal, but they're like, here, this. For me, that more like a jumping off point than this is the synthesis, this is the perfect distillate of an Age of Sigmar tournament.
Yeah, totally.
And so that was something I thought of when you first mentioned Platonic AOS. I'm like, well, is that the Platonic state of AOS where this is how we score it? And they mention paint and sportsmanship, and like it's all like, is that it? Is that like the theoretical baseline of what Age of Sigmar is? And I came to know was my own personal conclusion.
Right.
Like that's the jumping off point. And I think about that pack, because you're not going to be using that printed out thing right out of the GHB for Adepticon, are you, Brendan?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. But you still mentioned needing that sort of like mass appeal. When people show up, they're getting what they think Age of Sigmar is. And maybe I missed it, but could you reset it for me? What is that like experience you think 200 people are coming to Adepticon for?
Oh, they are looking for just a standard Warhammer experience where they can play 5 very normal games where my bias on the rule set does not interrupt their baseline understanding of the game of Warhammer. Ideally they play 5 people they haven't met before, or maybe they play some folks that they haven't seen in a long time, or one of their friends from the other side of the country, right? The goal is hopefully they're not playing their buddies unless they're planning on winning, and they play at the end. Then it is what it is, right?
The curse of playing the person you drove there with, it's real. Go on.
So I think with my experiences, most folks at Adepticon are just looking to play 5 games of Warhammer out of the book, missions out of the book, scoring out of the book, rules out of the book, just just an easy common language for folks to have. When I'm running something like Bruce City, and I say everybody gets an Anvil of Apotheosis character, worth up to 30 destiny points, right? Just whatever. Like, you get your 2,500 point army and this guy. I'll be able to make sure you're being honest at 50. I can do that.
Yeah.
At 212, if I say you get your 2,000 point army and your Anvil of Apotheosis character, and there's also this other side game that we're also playing with secondaries that have nothing to do with your game. It all
the
has
bingo
to do
sheet, if you're not familiar.
Right.
Sure, right. Things like that, and also you have these weird awards that if you construct your army in a very particular way, you're made eligible for those. But if you don't, and you do this other path, then there's this other set of awards that that you're eligible for. But if you don't do any of that, then there's just also this main, but also this, and that's not for everyone.
Trying to do the special Snowflake Award with 200 people versus 50. It's very different.
Oh, I'd probably get punched on my way out the door because somebody felt that their Snowflake army was extra special and it went 4-1, and I picked somebody that went 3-2, and I went, yeah, but like.
Yep.
Come on, this guy's playing like all Legends stuff. Well, Legends aren't legal, but that's not the point. They're like, he's playing a Cities of Sigmar list with Drake Spawn Knights and Gosh, what else is terrible in that book?
A bunch of bleak swords.
Sure. Like without the battalion,
For the
like
bleak
you know,
swords. Yeah.
Nick's Doctor True here is like, so there is no "I am the law" clause in the ACON pack.
I mean, there is in the sense that the judge's rulings are final, but I'm under the impression that the status quo is to relatively be maintained.
So if I may, and Tyler, it looks like you're holding off on a couple thoughts there, but I had a eureka moment while you were talking here, trying to explain the difference between Brew City Brawl and like Adepticon, and something came to my mind where the Platonic state of AOS might be that game in the basement with your buddy. Like just like that game. It's like the best slice of pizza in the world you've already had. And we always spend our lives chasing the next best slice of pizza, but you never, ever find it. Because that best slice of pizza, and you know the one I'm talking about, if I say the best slice of pizza, you have a memory in your mind right now of the best slice of pizza you've ever had. And that best slice of pizza wasn't just great because it like tasted the best, but there was an event that completely surrounded it. Maybe it was a birthday party, or like you were like, in my case, it was like a really kind of a bad time, and my mom just out of nowhere, we're getting pizza, we're renting movies from Blockbuster, any movies, even a rated R movie. Yeah, Andrew, even a rated R movie. And then that slice of pizza where you bite it and the cheese just keeps pulling forever, just like in the commercials. Like we spend our lives like seeking that best slice of pizza, and you never quite ever find it because it exists kind of in a equal parts fantasy and memory. And I think in terms of Platonic AOS, that's kind of the truth. It's that like that best game you played with your buddy at some point in your journey of like where you fell in love with this game, or maybe it was old. It was the best game of old Hammer you had too. Whatever that's like for me a little bit like that. And the tournament, not the tournament pack, but the way that like you kind of look at the baseline Age of Sigmar, the status quo Age of Sigmar, is I think you just called it, Brendan, to just kind of come up with some canon that we some lexicon that we can establish, is like the jumping off point. It's like the Newtonian physics, right? It works for what it works for, but we need a bigger, broader, better definition. That like a universal theory of Platonic AOS. And I don't think we're quite there. And maybe we'll never will be there, but it's totally worthy to pursue.
That's very well said, man. I love that. You're pretty good at this.
That could be an excellent point to stop the episode, but I gotta ask you, Brendan, anything to put on blast?
All right, guys, have a good evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we can top that.
Yeah. Brendan, anything to add? Any final digital soapbox moments? Anything you want to shout out to?
No, go listen to my podcast. It's cool and stuff. Cubic Shenanigans. The next episode we're going to release is we're going to be leveraging Dan's experience as a professional military man. He attended the Naval Academy, and it's kind of a weird thing that like we've never like really explored how real life theory-based tactics and strategies can apply to the game Age of Sigmar.
I don't like you taking over the real life and Warhammer meeting, Brendan.
It's the host. Like that's like you could
I'm
have
joking.
invited him.
I'm joking.
I told you he's got great stories. Like
I'm joking, man. No. Do go check out Cubic Shenanigans. There's a reason I don't do proper Battletome reviews. It's because Cubic Shenanigans exists. So like people do more competitive content, Mephisto, do more list analysis, and I'm like, I will do that stuff, but I got to do it in my way. But the like sort of the quintessential way you want to digest that stuff when you want to get caught up and taught Age of Sigmar. Cubic Shenanigans is a teaching podcast, first and foremost. So they seek to teach you that stuff. Not just like talk to you like you already know everything and you're just in a vacuum. No, it's like it's a very thoughtful. I know that's Dan's Dan is very particular about it being that.
Well, Dan was a teacher for a number of years, so that's one of his key orientations in life. And both my parents were teachers, so it's just one of the ways that both of us just kind of approach things. So it just made sense.
Yeah, right on. And Tyler, any final like digital soapbox moments? Anything you want to give a shout out to? Anything we missed?
Yeah, so two things come to mind. One is Season of War on YouTube. They're this amazing battle report channel that's out there and needs to get some more love in the community.
I'm upset at their level of production for as small as they are.
You should be.
Like I'm
It's
just
so
like...
good. Yeah, they're Canadian. They're really nice. They're stereotypical nice. It's a pretty fantastic channel, and they're trying to get some more support. So yeah, I hope folks will check them out. And yeah, I need to. I just realized that I told Jordan that I was going to sign up, and I keep forgetting to actually join. So
you just gotta like and subscribe. Just press the button.
Just press the damn button.
Press
I don't
the
think
button.
I have a credit card set up on YouTube, so I need to just do that. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's an amazing channel. Lumineth, KO, DOK. I mean, they're playing all kinds of armies, Flesh Eater Courts, Nighthaunt. Really awesome crew that they're getting going up there. They're starting up an ETC team. So yeah. Second thing, Brendan, and this might commit me to helping, but I'm still waiting for the Get Good Checklist podcast. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we've touched on it in different components on episodes, but you want the condensed.
I want the checklist manifesto version. It's a famous book. Check it out if anybody hasn't.
I've actually already read it. It's on my desk. It's on my desk.
You don't read. Anyone who watches Cubic or listens to Cubic Shenanigans knows that Brendan Melnick doesn't read.
It's a character I play.
Like, which is why I don't understand why you're so mad at me for not reading tournament packs when you don't read at all.
That's not true. That's a character I play.
All right.
But yeah, I want that episode.
Yeah.
And if I need to contribute to it, maybe.
If I can give you a hashtag, it's called the Get Goodening hashtag. It's something I've gotten in trouble for mentioning on Warhammer Weekly once. Yeah. I feel like Mephisto just told me to get good, but did it like differently than saying get good. And I'm like, I kind of did. Like,
yeah, screw the haters. That was a great episode. I remember that episode. I love that episode.
I thought I was token. I thought I was pretty me, authentically me, and I remember like wanted to put Petrifex Elite in the bubble and talk about the rest of the thing, but like we just couldn't not talk about Petrifex Elite at the time, which was unfortunate because. But then I got to go on Garage Hammer and then like be Mephisto Unleashed and just be excited with no active audience and no, there wasn't like a double guest thing. It was really just like just me and just kind of teeing off and. Like it's a lot more fun for me to not be the host. It turns out sometimes. Thank you both for being on tonight. I hope we kind of explored this topic to satisfaction. It like you said, Tyler. This is more in the esoteric. This isn't.
Yeah, it's more of a thought experiment than something that's incredibly well defined. Yeah.
Right. And check out Cubic Shenanigans. Check out Season of War on YouTube. Follows are free on the podcast thing, so you click that button that lets you know that they made the new thing, and then you get the thing. All right.
Yeah, like, subscribe, download, delete, download again, subscribe again, write a comment, delete it, write another comment. I mean, you all have time. I don't know, like, what else are you doing? Go do that.
Yeah. And super importantly, chat gang, you're the show within the show. Thank you for joining us this evening. Remember to drink your milk, pay your taxes, and since Tyler's here, I don't know, like hug a tree or something like that. What would the
Hug a
Sylvaneth
tree.
equivalent be?
That works. Yeah.
Plant an
Instead of living in
acorn and teleport a bunch of other trees onto the acorn.
There you go.
Right.
That's how
Good night, everybody. Thank you for hanging out.